Tonight, we're diving deep into the entire lore of every Pokémon move type. But before we begin our journey into Pokémon lore, I want to take a moment to welcome you. Whether this is your first night here, or you've made stellar sleep part of your nightly routine. For those of you who've been joining us consistently, I want to thank you for being such an integral part of our channel. Be sure to share this video with someone you know who loves Pokémon. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment day 1. I'll be tracking our progress right alongside you. Now let's get back to the video. Close your eyes and imagine a world where the very air around you crackles with the latent energy of 1,000 different possibilities. Auhai, since 1996, we have stepped into the tall grass of the Pokémon world, commanding creatures of myth and legend to perform incredible feats of power. We call them moves. Them as mere buttons to press or tactical choices in a high-stakes battle. But beneath the surface of every ember, every gust of wind, and every psychic ripple lies a hidden history that spans nearly 30 years of evolution. From the moment a Nidoran first used Horn Attack in the very first episode of the animated series to the reality-bending moves of the modern era, these techniques are more than just data points. They are the language of the Pokémon themselves. Have you ever wondered why a move like Hyper Beam feels so heavy, so final, that it leaves the user gasping for air? Or why certain Pokémon must master a specific pulse of energy, like Dragon Pulse, before they can undergo the radical transformation of evolution? The story of Pokémon moves is the story of a universe trying to find its balance. In the beginning, there were only 165 ways to strike, and the rules were chaotic. Rock-type moves were whispers of what they would become, and the terrifying dominance of psychic types went unchecked until the very fabric of the world changed to introduce the shadows of the dark type and the resilience of steel. This is a journey through the fundamental forces of the Pokémon multiverse. We are going to explore the elemental triads that define the core of our journey, the scientific mysteries of the physical and special split that redefined how we understand strength, and the ancient lore hidden within the beams, pulses, and orbs that light up the battlefield. We will look back at the days when Bite was a simple, normal type move, and when the move Curse was a nameless mystery belonging to a type that didn't even exist in the Pokédex. We will trace the lineage of signature moves, from the humble waterfall of a Sea King to the world-ending Z moves and Max moves of the recent past. As the sun sets and the world grows quiet, let the sounds of the tall grass and the distant cries of legendary creatures wash over you. We are going to deconstruct the mechanics, the myths, and the mistakes that shaped every generation of Pokémon. From the neon-soaked streets of Kanto to the vast open reaches of Paldea, every move tells a story of adaptation. Why does Ice Beam freeze the heart of its opponent? How did a human-thrown rock in the early days of the anime foreshadow the overwhelming power of a Hyper Beam? And what does it mean for a Pokémon to forget a move, transitioning from a simple poof of smoke to a celebratory ta-da? Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the exhaustive history of every type, every significant shift in the metagame, and the strange developmental quirks that turned a move intended for a Staryu into the foundational rock slide we know today. This is not just a list of attacks, this is the complete whispered history of the powers that define the world of Pokémon. Whether you are a veteran trainer who remembers the glitchy fields of the original Game Boy, or a newcomer curious about the origins of the moves you use today, there is a place for you here. Settle in, get comfortable, and let the lore of the Pokémon world guide you into a deep and restful sleep. We begin at the very beginning, in a world of 16 types and infinite potential, where the first move was made and the legend was born. In 1996, Satoshi Tajiri and his small team at Game Freak squeezed the essence of an entire battling universe into the flickering green monochrome of the original Game Boy. That handheld wonder, with its mere 64 kilobytes of RAM and a processor chugging at 4 MHz forced every design choice to be a brutal act of precision. No room for extravagance, just raw foundational code that would ripple through every Pokémon game for decades. The move system emerged from this crucible, a compact library of 165 attacks that etched the DNA of Pokémon combat into silicon. Picture the constraints they wrestled with. Each move needed a name, a power value, an accuracy rating, a type affiliation, and effects packed into tiny data slots. Animation frames? Limited to the simplest pixel bursts to avoid crashing the cart. Type matchups? Coded as multipliers in a single byte, balancing 15 types without bloating memory. And PP, those points of endurance, capped to prevent infinite loops on battery life that lasted mere hours. From this forge came moves like Tackle and Scratch, the primal scratches and bashes that every starter Pokémon wielded right out of the gate. Their damage calculated straight from the creature's attack stats slamming against defense. No fancy splits yet, just pure unfiltered math. Those 165 moves weren't just a list, they were the primordial code. There'd be a genetic blueprint dictating how Pokémon would clash, evolve, and define their roles. Normal type strikes dominated, flooding the roster with 68 entries, over 40% of the total, because they served as the neutral backbone, the typeless canvas every fighter could paint on. Why? The Game Boy's limits demanded universality. A Bulbasaur couldn't hog fire moves before it learned Ember. Instead, Pound and Vine Whip bridged the gaps, letting raw stats shine through without type-specific bloat. This setup birthed the hidden mechanics of Generation 1's era, where special and physical weren't divided by move, they lurked in the types themselves. Normal, fighting, flying, poison, ground, rock, bug, ghost, all funneled into attack for physical fury, while fire, water, electric, grass, ice, psychic, Dragon leaned on the singular special stat. No nuance, just a binary pulse of power. Delve deeper into that normal dominance, and you uncover why fighting moves started as shadows of their future selves. Mere physical upgrades bolted onto the normal framework. Karate Chop, debuting with a crisp 50 power and a doubled critical hit chance, wasn't some elemental karateka revolution. It was Normal's beefier cousin, slicing through foes with the same immunity-ignoring reliability as Pound or Hyper Beam. Low Kick weighed targets implicitly in its damage, but typed as fighting, it still rode attack waves like a souped-up tackle. High Jump Kick, a risky 85 power leap, yet coded to treat psychic walls as mere speed bumps, not the ironclad counters they'd become. Game Freak layered these as enhancements to fill the early game's brawler void, where Pikachu's quick attack outpaced Thunderbolt in raw accessibility. Fighting wasn't a rival type yet, it was Normal's muscle-bound extension, ensuring that even a scrappy Rattata could chop its way to victory without waiting for evolutions to unlock flair. But the true enigma pulses in the typeless era's underbelly, those hidden mechanics where Generation 1's raw stats concealed a wilder reality. Hyper Beam exemplifies it, a 150 power juggernaut, normal typed to bypass immunities, blasting from legendaries like Mewtwo as a rechargeable exhaustion ray. You'd fire it, watch the screen flash with pixelated fury, then your Pokémon slumped, forced to skip a turn, mirroring the Game Boy's own battery drain metaphor. No stab multiplier nonsense yet. Its damage poured straight from attack, untyped in spirit, embodying the era's blank slate brutality. Ice Beam complemented this shadow world at 90 power, a special chill with a 10% freeze clamp. Its animation, a stark blue-white smear against the green backdrop. Prototype cryogenic lockdown for foes like Golem, tying back to experimental star freeze vibes in Rockslide's origins. Rockslide itself whispers of the code's mysteries. Originally ground-typed in Japanese red and green betas, it shifted to rock for balance, hurling boulders with 30% flinch in a hail of pixels that could bury faster threats. These weren't accidents, they were hacks around hardware limits, where PP capped at 5 for heavy hitters to curb overuse. In inaccuracy like Thunder's 70% evoked stormy unreliability on sluggish hardware. Dragon Rage fixed at 40 damage, a flat pulse ignoring stats, pure typeless relic, ensuring Dratini punched above its weight. And Curse, a ghostly? Type Spectre, in the original, self-damaging on non-ghost users, its code a tangled preview of type evolutions to come. This primordial code, locked in rhythms that echoed forever. Early stage Pokémon slinging physical normal and fighting basics, like Charmander's Ember waiting behind Scratch, while evolutions like Charmeleon claimed special flames. The 165 set the type chart's bones, 15 affinities clashing in 8-bit arithmetic, where Ghost's immunity to normal birthed strategies around Lick's paralyzed tickle. Bug moves like Pin Missile multi-tapped for coverage, pinching the Game Boy's frame rate just enough to thrill without stutter. Ground's Earthquake quaked screens wide, dig tunnel turns into ambushes, all optimized for link cable trades, where battery sync mattered more than spectacle. Yet beneath the surface, glitches lingered, missing nose delta corruptions from bad trades, exposing how moves like Convert swapped types mid-battle, a beta fossil of fluidity. Self-destruct and explosion wiped teams in sacrificial booms. Their zero-power aftermath, a nod to the era's do-or-die ethos. Metronome's roulette spin pulled any move randomly. Earthquake via chance unveiling dev secrets like Fisher's instant KO lottery, born from Giovanni's anime TM machinations. These quirks weren't flaws, they were the code breathing, the DNA mutating under constraints that birthed Pokemon's soul. As we trace these foundational pulses, the beams and blasts start to cluster around elemental cores. Normal's raw blasts giving way to the first true triad of fire, water, and sparks that redefined special dominance. That triad's secrets unfold next in Chapter 2, the elemental triad, where the sparks of creation ignite into something far more volatile. From those 165 primordial moves etched into the Game Boy's flickering screen back in 1996, a delicate balance began to emerge, one forged in the raw clash of energies that would define Pokémon battles for generations: fire, water, and electric. These three stood as the elemental triad, the foundational rock-paper-scissors of energy projection, where each held dominion over the next in a cycle, as inevitable as the tides or a storm's fury. Picture the earliest skirmishes on that handheld battlefield. A burst of ember from Charmander singes the air, its orange flicker exploiting the frailty of grass types lurking in the underbrush. But that same flame meets its match in Squirtle's defiant water gun, steam hissing as the blaze is quenched in an instant. Yet water, in turn, conducts the wrath of Pikachu's thunderbolt, arcs of electric fury dancing across the surface, paralyzing and overpowering in a surge that leaves ripples of static lingering on the pixelated waves. This wasn't mere coincidence, it was deliberate design, a triad woven into the code to prevent any single force from overwhelming the world. Fire evaporates water. Water grounds electric. Electric ignites the kindling of fire. The loop closed perfectly, here ensuring no Pokémon could reign unchallenged without cunning evolution or alliance. You can feel the philosophy pulsing through every encounter, can't you? These weren't just attacks, they were projections of primal power, linear blasts of focused essence hurtling across the screen like arrows from the gods. Flamethrower roars forth in Gen 1's crude sprites, a horizontal jet of red pixels that warps the air with heat haze, while Hydro Pump counters with a pressurized torrent, blue streams bending under their own force. Thunder follows, jagged yellow bolts forking unpredictably, zapping foes mid-leap. Developers at Creatures Inc. crafted this interplay to mirror nature's own brutal poetry, where energy flows in cycles, each triumph sowing the seeds of its downfall. Early playtesters must have marveled as battles unfolded not in chaos, but in this elegant dance, the triad forcing trainers to anticipate, adapt, evolve. But woven into this triad's heart was a subtler genius: status control, embodied in Ice Beam, the ultimate tool for seizing command of the chaos. Debuting alongside its fiery and watery kin in 1996, Ice Beam wasn't content with raw damage. Its 90 base power paled against Hyper Beam's devastating 150, yet it carried a 10% chance to freeze, encasing enemies in crystalline prisons that turned aggressive behemoths into statues. This was no accident. It reflected a deeper design ethos, where ice served as the triad's silent enforcer, bridging water's fluidity with electric's precision by halting momentum altogether. Imagine Articuno unleashing it in the anime's frozen glow. Yao shards of azure light coalescing into a beam that doesn't just wound, it immobilizes, buying turns, dictating pace, transforming battles into chess matches on ice. The philosophy ran deeper still. Ice Beam embodied control amid projection, a cryogenic pulse that contrasted the explosive freedom of its elemental siblings. While fire scorched indiscriminately and water flooded the field, Ice Beam pinpointed, paralyzed the flow of combat itself. Developers envisioned it as the scalpel to the triad's hammers, especially for evolved forms. Think Dugong or Cloyster, mid-stage Pokémon, shedding basic tackles for this special mastery. In competitive lore, it became the staple, freezing Gyarados mid-thrash or halting Venusaur's solar beam charge, its chill echoing through metas even as power crept higher. You hear that faint crystalline chime in the sound design. That's the sound of inevitability, of energy bent to the trainer's will. Yet prototypes whispered of wilder origins, anomalies buried in the code, like fossils in amber. Take Rock Slide, that cascading avalanche of boulders debuting in Generation 1. It was originally coded as Star Freeze, a bespoke anomaly tailored for Staryu, the star-shaped sentinel of the seas. Debuggers uncovered traces in early builds. Instead of tumbling rocks, it manifested as a radial freeze burst, stars twinkling into icy shards around the foe, tying Staryu's water lineage to the triad's chill underbelly. Why the pivot? Game Freak logs hint at balance tweaks. Staryu's speed demanded status over spread damage, but rock scarcity begged for expansion. By final release, Star Freeze morphed into Rock Slide, ground typing stripped away, leaving echoes of stellar frost in its animation. Boulders glinting with unnatural sheen, as if remnants of that watery star's cryogenic legacy lingered. These quirks revealed the triad's fragility in prototyping, where boundaries blurred. Staryu's radial freeze prefigured Ice Beam's precision, testing how elemental projection could hybridize, rock as frozen water, stars as electric prisms caught in ice. Other ghosts haunted the labs. Early Hyper Beam sprites flickered with elemental hues before settling into Normal's typeless void. A sleep beam, exhausting users like a triad overload. Water Pulse, arriving later in Generation 3's 103 new moves, pulsed confusion into the mix, 20% haze rings expanding the control paradigm beyond freeze. And through it all, the visual language evolved, shedding Generation 1's stark flashes for symphonies of elemental animation. Those initial blasts, simple palette swaps, red for fire, blue for water, yellow for electric, strobing across monochrome tiles, accompanied by chiptune beeps that mimicked arcade zaps. By Generation 2 in 1999, Gust twisted into flying cyclones. Bite darkened to proto-dark snarls. But the triad deepened. Flamethrower's jet gained wispy trails. Hydro pump foamed with bubbles. Thunder cracked with branching veins. Generation 4's physical special split in 2006 unleashed the floodgates. Focus Blast as special fighting fury, close combat as physical melee, Yet Ice Beam refined its beam into a spiraling helix, frost particles trailing like comet dust. Enter Generation 5's Electro Ball in 2010 among 92 additions. A plasma orb scaling with speed differentials 60 to 150 power, hurtling as a charged sphere that pulses Electric's triad roll into spherical dominion. Shadow Ball joined earlier in Generation 2, its ectoplasmic orb dropping defenses 20%, countering psychic swells with ghostly throbs. Pulses followed, Dragon Pulse in Generation 4, 85 power shockwave, evolving Poipole to Naganadel, vibrational dragon energy rippling outward. These weren't evolutions, they were ascensions, visuals blooming from binary flashes to layered particle effects, beams fracturing into prismatic refractions, orbs glowing with inner plasma churn. Waterfall, Goldine's Generation 1 signature, turned HM in 2, cascaded as static falls before gaining misty veils. Karate Chop shifted from normal to fighting purity post-Generation 1. Forget animations poofed into Tadar flourishes by Generation 5. Z moves in 7, Max in 8's 44, 69 in 9's Scarlet and Violet, all layered atop the triad spine, yet that rock, paper, scissors, core pulsed eternal. Visuals now cinematic ballets of light and shadow. As this elemental ballet reached its zenith, a new force stirred in the shadows, one that bent minds and monopolized the meta, untouched by fire's lick or water's drown. What reigned supreme before dark and ghost redrew the lines. That dominion awaits in Chapter 3, the psychic hegemony. As those elemental beams carved their paths through Kanto's battlefields, carving frozen foes and scorching rivals alike, a subtler force began to eclipse them all. Psychic Pokémon weren't just strong, they were inevitable. In the first generation, they claimed victory after victory, sweeping tournaments from Japan to the world, leaving trainers staring at their screens in stunned silence. Alakazam, with its spoon-bending mind, clocked special attack stats that dwarfed everything else, hitting harder than a thunderbolt from Zapdos itself. How did this happen? Not through malice or master planning, but through a cascade of oversights in the raw code of Generation 1. Picture the Game Freak offices in 1996, where programmers like Game Freak's Satoshi Tajiri and his team wrestled the Game Boy's 16 kilobyte limits into submission. They coded 15 types, each meant to form a delicate web of strengths and weaknesses. Psychic sat near the top, yet vulnerable only to, well, something elusive, but in practice it crushed poison fighting even its own supposed mirrors. The secret lay buried in the stats themselves. Generation 1 had no physical special split. Every move drew from a single special stat for both attack and defense. Psychic types monopolized that niche. Mewtwo's special attack soared past 200, while its special defense formed an impenetrable wall. Evolved psychics like Kadabra and Starmie fired off Psybeam after Psybeam, each blast a psychic pulse that bypassed armor, searing straight into the opponent's mind. And then there was Amnesia. This wasn't some forgettable utility move. It was the crown jewel of psychic dominance, a deliberate invocation of mental fortitude drawn from real-world pseudoscience and folklore. In the Pokédex, Hypno clutches its pendulum, erasing memories to sharpen its focus, but Amnesia takes it further. The move's lore whispers of the ancient mystics who blank their minds to ascend beyond mortal limits, boosting special defense by 2 full stages in 1 turn. No recharge, no drawback, just pure escalating power. Trainers exploited it ruthlessly, and Alakazam casts Amnesia, its psychic barriers thickening like fog over a forgotten sea, then unleashes Psychic for damage that could one-shot a Charizard. In competitive play, this combo defined hegemony. Stats from those early tournaments tell the tale. Psychic types topped leaderboards 80% of the time, their special sweeps turning battles into foregone conclusions. The terrifying truth? It wasn't balanced design. It was the unintended godhood of lumping all energy projection into one stat pool, where psychics swam like apex predators in a pond stocked only for them. Counters existed, but they were whispers against a storm. Nightshade slithered in from the shadows, a ghost move that ignored stats entirely, dealing fixed damage equal to the user's level. A level 100 Gengar could chunk a Mewtwo for exactly 100 hit points. No more, no less. A grim equalizer when special blasts flew wild. Confuse Ray complemented it, that eerie glow inducing self-inflicted chaos, turning psychic prodigies into flailing wrecks as they punched their own faces. These were the early mind readers' banes, status ploys born from the type chart's fringes. Ghost and poison trainers clung to them like lifelines, watching Kadabra thrash in confusion while Nightshade chipped away. Yet even these felt makeshift, band-aids on a gaping wound. The wound's source, a developer oversight so profound it rewrote the meta overnight. Ghost types were meant to prey on psychics, the spectral hunters stalking the mind's domain. Lick, Nightshade, even early prototypes promised super effective haunts. But in the final cartridge, Ghost moves struck Psychic for 0 damage. Utterly ineffective. Why? A simple programming blunder in the type matchup table. Programmers coded Psychic as immune to Ghost, flipping the intended dynamic. Ghosts, designed as their perfect foil, bounced harmlessly off mental shields. Imagine the testers, perhaps overworked in those crunch time weeks, missing it amid the 451 Pokémon to balance. Official statements later confirmed it, a misread flag in the data, where Ghost's super effective chart looped back on itself. Psychic reigned unchecked through Viridian Gym, Lavender Tower, even the Elite Four, where Sabrina's mind-bending empire awaited. Trainers joked that Ghosts feared the Psychics more than vice versa, their ethereal forms dissolving on contact. This hegemony pulsed through Kanto's lore like a collective unconscious. The Sylph Kosa takeover by Team Rocket, psychic channels hijacked for control, Mewtwo's origin in the Cinnabar Mansion labs, a psychic apocalypse born from human hubris. Even the anime echoed it. Sabrina's doll turned victims to stone, her Kadabra outwitting beasts with a glance. Amnesia's glow on screen symbolized erasure, not just of memories, but of opposition itself. Competitive data from 1996 links backs it up. Psychic usage hit 92% in top brackets, with Amnesia setups comprising over half those victories. The special stats tyranny made physical bruises like Machamp laughable, Karate Chop glancing off psychic barriers, while Psybeam eviscerated from afar. Yet cracks formed in that perfect dominion. Whispers of imbalance reached Game Freak, fueling the fire for revolution. Bugs aside, the over-reliance on special sweeps begged for correction, a shadow rising to claim what Ghosts could not. As we edge toward Chapter 4, the Dark Correction, you'll see how they shattered the psychic throne with types forged in midnight steel, turning hegemony into history. By the close of Generation 1, psychic Pokémon like Alakazam and Mewtwo weren't just strong. They were gods among insects, shrugging off nearly every attack thrown their way, while their special stats ballooned to absurd heights through moves like Amnesia. Game Freak watched as competitive battles turned into psychic parades, where one psychic type could sweep entire teams without breaking a sweat. Bugs barely scratched them. Ghosts had no real presence with Lick's pitiful power, and the rest of the roster folded like paper. Something had to give, and in the shadowed valleys of Johto, that correction arrived like a thief in the night. Generation 2, released in 1999 for the Game Boy Color, didn't just expand the world, it rewrote the rules of engagement. Amid the 86 new moves and a fresh batch of Pokémon, 2 new types emerged from the darkness, Steel and Dark. These weren't arbitrary additions, they were precision strikes against Psychic's throne. Dark types resisted Ghost and Psychic, while hitting both super effectively, turning the untouchable into prey. Steel, with its laundry list of resistances, including psychic immunity, shielded allies, and pummeled fairies before fairies even existed. Imagine the first time a Tyranitar stared down a Mewtwo, its crunch move sinking fangs into psychic armor that had never felt a true bite before. Developers at Creatures Inc. later confirmed this was no accident. Psychic's oversight in Kanto demanded balance, and Johto delivered it with cold, calculated efficiency. Take Bite, for instance, a move that had lurked in Generation 1 as a mere normal-type chomp, dealing 60 base power with a 10% flinch chance, unremarkable among the 165 originals. It was the stuff of early evolutions, a physical jab for fangs like those of Gyarados or Primeape, fitting the Primordial code where normal moves served as blank slates for raw aggression. But in Gold and Silver, Bite underwent a retroactive metamorphosis. No longer normal, it became a cornerstone of the freshly minted Dark type. Its power bumped to 60, accuracy sharpened, and now super effective against those smug psychics. This wasn't a simple tweak, it was a narrative pivot. Pokémon that had learned Bite in the old games suddenly wielded a weapon forged for the new era, as if the shadows themselves had rewritten their instincts overnight. Umbreon, the Eclipse Fox, made it a staple, he curling in the moonlight before lunging with teeth that pierced minds. Competitive players rejoiced. Bite's evolution mirrored the type's ethos, stealthy, punishing, and utterly unforgiving to the overconfident. Yet Dark couldn't claim all the glory in this correction. Ghosts needed teeth too, and Shadow Ball rolled in like a harbinger from the ether. Debuting in Generation 2 as an 80-power special ghost move, it hurled a spectral orb that not only battered psychics for double damage, but carried a 20% chance to lower their special defense, cracking the very stats that made them invincible. Picture it in the anime's early Johto arcs, a haunter lobbing that pulsating mass of darkness, the screen flickering with eerie glows as it drained the foe's resolve. This wasn't just power, it was poetic justice. With psychic dominance fracturing teams in the prior generation, Shadow Ball tipped the scales, becoming a ghost staple alongside Nightshade and Dream Eater. Its orb form, compact, swirling with otherworldly mist, evoked the plasmaspheres of sci-fi nightmares, a far cry from Lick's sloppy tongue. Developers drew from competitive outcry, ensuring ghosts could finally haunt the meta without fading into obscurity. But Johto's shadows hid deeper enigmas, none stranger than the infamous question mark type, the placeholder that baffled players and coders alike. In the original Japanese Gold and Silver, moves like Curse bore this cryptic label, a remnant of development flux before Dark fully solidified. Curse itself was a mechanical riddle wrapped in superstition. For non-ghost users, it drained a quarter of the caster's max HP to curse the target, siphoning health each turn until death or switch out. A masochistic setup for tanks like Snorlax, who could afford the self-inflicted wound to whittle down threats. Switch to a ghost like Gengar though, and Curse transformed. No HP cost, just a single turn stat boost across attack, defense, speed, and special variants, turning phantoms into juggernauts. This duality stemmed from the question mark type's limbo status, where ghost heritage triggered alternate code paths. Players puzzled over it in forums, theorizing voodoo rituals or ancestral pacts, while data miners uncovered its roots in scrapped type charts. Curse's ambiguity lingered until Crystal clarified some edges, but its original form embodied Johto's theme. Power born from the unknown, dug a dark mirror to Psychic's overt clarity. Steel complemented this shadowy arsenal, not with offense alone, but impregnable defense. Magnemite lines evolved into steel behemoths, resisting Psychic, while their mirror coat reflected specials back at the sender. Moves like Metal Claw scratched in as physical dark counters, but the type's true genius lay in reshaping the chart. Now Poison and Ground faltered less against Rock, and Fairy would later quake in its boots. Generation 2's overhaul added layers to evolutions too. Houndour pups gnawing with bite, evolving into Houndoom that spewed dark flames, their packs hunting psychic herds across Johto's foggy routes. Competitive circuits shifted overnight. Psychic teams crumbled under Umbrian walls and Gengar shadows, proving the correction's bite. This dark pivot rippled through the series, setting precedents for future balances. Bite's lineage birthed Crunch and Foul Play. Shadow Ball spawned Focus Blast analogues in the spectral realm, and Curse's Curse evolved into Taunt and Destiny Bond echoes. Players who imported Kanto saves saw their old Bite users reborn as Dark Wielders, a meta-commentary on adaptation. Even the anime nodded to it. Team Rocket's Meowth scheming with newfound shadows. Giovanni's Persian flashing steel glints. Johto didn't erase Psychic's legacy, it humbled it, ensuring no type would reign eternal. As these corrections solidified the battlefield's shadows, a brighter fury began to coalesce, pure energy weapons that would redefine destruction. In the next chapter, Beams of Pure Energy, we'll trace the lineage of those relentless blasts, from Hyper Beam's exhausting roar to the icy grip that freezes fates. What happens when raw power meets precision light? Stay with me as we illuminate the beams. As Generation 2 shook up the balance with those new Dark and Steel types, finally giving Psychic a run for its money, the raw power of beams from the very first games lingered like an afterimage on the screen. Hyper Beam, that colossal normal type blast debuting back in Generation 1, stood as the ultimate finisher, a move so potent it demanded everything from its user. Picture a Pokémon like Venusaur or Blastoise channeling this torrent of untyped energy, a straight line of destruction, clocking in at 150 base power in modern terms. But the catch, the genius design hook, was the recharge. After unleashing it, the attacker freezes, utterly spent, skipping a full turn to recover. This wasn't just game balance. It echoed a deeper law of exhaustion, the physical toll of harnessing pure, unfiltered Pokémon might. Think about it. In the Pokémon world, Hyper Beam isn't some effortless light show. It's the pinnacle of risk, a desperate all-or-nothing gamble reserved for bosses and legendaries. Early adopters like Raiden in Kanto gyms felt this legacy firsthand, their rocky hides cracking open to fire off beams that could level a foe in one shot, only to leave themselves wide open. Developers in 1996 crafted it as a typeless force, tying straight into raw attack stats before the physical special split redefined everything in Generation 4. No elemental flair, just overwhelming force, a nod to the primordial code we explored in those opening chapters. And that recharge? It's the law's heartbeat, the body breaking down after surging with power too vast for flesh or scale to contain. The anime amplified this to mythic proportions. Remember Ash's Charizard against Articuno, or Team Rocket's endless botched hyper beams carving craters into the earth? These weren't tidy video game effects. They warped terrain, shattered boulders, sent shockwaves rippling across landscapes. Beams became symbols of cataclysm, pure energy so intense it scorched the air and left glowing scars. Hyper Beam's debut even tied back to a human hurling a rock in the earliest episodes, foreshadowing how these moves blurred lines between trainer command and primal outburst. It's as if the lore whispered that true power always exacts a price, a momentary vulnerability where the mighty become mortal. This exhaustion theme pulsed through other beams too, evolving the concept across generations. Ice Beam, that icy staple from Generation 1, hurled cryogenic pulses with a 10% freeze chance, turning battles into frozen standoffs. But Hyper Beam's shadow loomed largest, influencing moves like Giga Impact or Draco Meteor later on. High damage nukes followed by paralysis or stat drops, all channeling that same spend everything philosophy. Why design it this way? Game Freak wanted finishers that felt earned, moves where victory teetered on a knife's edge, mirroring the trainer's own high-stakes choices. Then there's Solar Beam, grass-type wrath incarnate, twisting the beam motif into nature's furious response. Debuting alongside Hyper Beam in Generation 1, it demanded a full turn to charge under sunlight, erupting as a verdant laser of photosynthetic fury. Base power matched Hyper's heft at 120 post-adjustments, but its tie to weather mechanics elevated it to signature status. Sunny Day amps it up, halving charge time, rain or shadows drag it out. This wasn't arbitrary. Lore-wise, Solar Beam embodied the sun's raw gift to plants, a concentrated burst of chlorophyll-fueled energy that could fell forests or foes alike. Venusaur's go-to, oddish lines, even legendaries like Shaman wielded it as if summoning the Earth's bottled rage. In the anime, Solar Beam lived up to its billing. Meganium's blasts vaporizing obstacles, Sceptiles piercing through storms, altering fields into smoldering craters. It tied beams to the environment, making weather not just a tactic, but a narrative force. Why did it become nature's wrath personified? Generation 1's elemental triads craved distinction. Fire blast for flames, hydro pump for waves, but grass needed something solar, tying into real-world botany. Developers layered in that charge phase, mirroring Hyper Beam's risk, but with ecological flair. Harness the sun, or fizzle in the shade. Competitively, it dominated sun cores, a high-reward beam demanding setup. Much like a gardener cultivating a storm. These beams didn't stay linear blasts forever. They pulsed and orbed outward, expanding the pure energy arsenal. Dragon Pulse, from Generation 4, introduced vibrational waves, an 85 power special dragon move that shockwaved through defenses, even triggering Poipol's evolution into Naganadel in Generation 7. No recharge, but that pulsing lore evoked draconic roars made manifest, fitting mythical beasts like Rayquaza. Water Pulse rippled in from Generation 3, a 60 power water ring with 20% confusion, contrasting the static beams with hypnotic waves. Goldine's lineage traded waterfalls for these status-infused spheres. Orbs took it spherical. Shadow Ball, Generation 2's ghostly 80-power ectoplasm dropper, with a 20% special defense shave, born to bolster the new ghost type against psychic overlords. Hurl a haunted sphere, watch it detonate in spectral bursts. The anime showed it phasing through walls, cursing shadows alive. Electro Ball from Generation 5 scaled power from 60 to 150 based on speed gaps. A plasma orb, zapping the sluggish, embodying Electric's opportunistic zap. These weren't dilutions. They refined the beam legacy, pure energy projected in waves, rings, balls, all carrying that high-stakes essence. What tied them? Sci-fi roots in Generation 1's Game Boy limits, evolving from simple pixels to terrain-shaking spectacles. Hyper Beam's recharge lore grounded it all. Channel too much and you pay. Ice Beam froze the moment. Solar Beam waited for the sun. Pulses and orbs adapted the formula for new eras. Legendaries claimed them. Mewtwo's Hyper Beam reshaping islands. Celebi's Solar Beam blooming paradises. Beams as world alterers. Exhaustion as the great equalizer. As these energy forms proliferated, Generation 3's massive expansion beckoned with fresh horizons, pulling beams into tropical tempests and ancient secrets. That's where Chapter 6, the Hoen expansion, thus picks up, unveiling how 103 new moves flooded the seas and skies, birthing pulses that could summon legendaries and orbs that warped reality itself. You won't believe the aquatic evolutions waiting just ahead. That raw exhaustion from Hyper Beam's recharge lingered like an echo in the Pokémon world. A reminder that even the mightiest blasts demanded a price. But Hoen changed everything. In 2002, when Ruby and Sapphire hit the Game Boy Advance, developers unleashed a torrent of 103 brand new moves, the largest single expansion yet, flooding the battlefields with possibilities that rippled far beyond Kanto's rigid beams. These weren't just additions, they reshaped combat at its core. Picture the humid coasts of Hoen, where volcanic peaks met endless oceans, and suddenly every Pokémon gained abilities, hidden traits that activated like dormant instincts. A Pikachu might now surge with endless electric sparks under rain, or a Snorlax shrug off status with thick fat. Abilities intertwined with moves in ways Gen 1 and 2 could only dream of, turning battles into layered symphonies of synergy. Levitate made ground attacks vanish into thin air, while Drizzle summoned storms before a single drop fell. This was no mere upgrade, it was evolution encoded into every creature's essence, amplifying moves that once stood alone. At the heart of this wave pulsed Water Pulse, a shimmering ring of water that debuted right there in Hoenn. Forget the straight-line crashes of Water Gun or the tumbling falls of Surf. This was vibration incarnate, a concentric ripple of azure energy, yet distorting the air as it expanded, slamming foes with 60 base power and a 20% chance to confuse. Trainers felt it first in battles against primal forces, the way it warped reality, leaving opponents dazed in hypnotic swirls. Water Pulse marked the pivot from brute hydroblasts to resonant waves, echoing the ancient seas that birthed Hoenn's leviathans. It whispered of deeper physics, sound waves through water, pressure pulses that mimicked whale songs, or tidal heartbeats, paving the way for a combat era where energy didn't just hit, it oscillated. That vibrational shift spread like ripples across the move pool. Hyper Voice emerged as a deafening roar, a normal-type barrage at 90 base power that ignored barriers like Substitute, slicing through with pure sonic force. No longer confined to muffled cries, Sound became a weaponized category, moves tagged as sound-based for the first time, piercing protections and punishing the shielded. Grass Whistle lulled with eerie melodies, a flute-like trill dropping foes into slumber. Snatch stole buffs mid-note, as if hijacking an enemy's harmony. These weren't accidents. Hoenn's soundscape evoked the region's primal calls, the screech of Wingull flocks, the thunderous bellows from volcanic depths, forcing a new layer of interaction, where silence was the ultimate defense. And then there were the gods who wielded climate itself. The weather trio, Groudon, Kyogre, Rayquaza, embodied Hoenn's law as living cataclysms. Groudon's precipice blades erupted from the earth in jagged fury, summoning endless drought that scorched the field for 5 turns, halving water damage and boosting fire to inferno levels. Kyogre countered with Origin Pulse, a barrage of stellar water beams under its drizzle downpour, flooding skies and amplifying water's wrath while quenching fire. Rayquaza, the Sky Sentinel, coiled with Dragon Ascent or Extreme Speed, its airlock ability shattering weather's grip to restore balance. These legendaries didn't just use moves, their presences altered the world's breath. Sun-baked deserts, swallowing oceans, primordial rains drowning continents, mega evolutions later amplifying the chaos with Primordial Sea and Desolate Land, where weather became eternal. Imagine the lore unfolding in Hoenn's tales. Ancient tablets depicting Groudon awakening continents, with earthquakes rumbles, now laced with sand streams blinding gales, Kyogre birthing oceans via sheer cold's glacial pulses, all under moves that bent meteorology to their will. Sunny day and rain dance refined here weren't parlor tricks. They evoked the trio's feud, trainers invoking micro-apocalypses to tip scales. Hail pelted like frozen wrath, sandstorm ground foes to dust, snow warning foreshadowing later blizzards. Abilities like Swift Swim doubled speeds in rain, turning Goldeen lines into blurs, while Chlorophyll let Oddish kin photosynthesize at blinding paces under sun. This was world-altering power, moves as forces of nature, where a single command could drought a battlefield or monsoon it into oblivion. Hoenn's 103 moves pulsed with this ambition. Facade doubled power through pain, turning status into strength. Knock-off stripped items with dark precision. A thief's whisper, crippling strategies. Will-o-wisp ignited burns without fail. A ghostly ember dancing on fur and scales. Secret power adapted to terrain. Paralysis in sand, sleep in grass, mirroring Hoen's diverse biomes, from dew-kissed roots to ash-choked craters. Even revamped classics like Aerial Ace gained unflinching accuracy, slicing fog like a Tylo's dive. Yet beneath the spectacle, developers wove vulnerabilities. Water Pulse's confusion mirrored the disorientation of clashing waves, Hyper Voice's penetration, a nod to sound's inexorable travel. The Weather Trio's moves demanded mastery, overextend drought, and fire types turned on you. Botch Rain Dance and Electric Surges backfired. Abilities introduced wild cards. Soundproof silenced Hyper Voice entirely, a Pokémon's innate barrier against vibrational assault. As Hoen's waves crashed and echoes faded, our trainers yearned for finer control over that surging power, distinguishing the bruises from the casters, the fists from the pulses. That reckoning arrives in the great physical special split, where every move's true nature finally breaks free. As Generation 3 wrapped up its wave of innovation with those 103 new moves and the dawn of abilities, Pokémon's battle system still laboured under an ancient divide, one that treated entire types as either fists or spells, brute force or ethereal blasts. But in 2006, with the launch of Generation 4 in Sinnoh, everything changed. Developers finally severed the tether, linking a move's damage style to its type category alone. No longer would fire mean special by default, or fighting demand physical contact every time. Each move now earned its own badge: physical, special, or status, judged purely on its essence and mechanics. This was the Great Split, a revolution that unleashed Pokémon's true potential, turning rigid rules into fluid power. Picture the chaos before. In the days of Kanto, Johto and Hoenn, your Gyarados, a towering sea serpent with attack stats rivaling a golem, could only hurl water moves like Hydro Pump using its middling special attack. Those waves crashed weakly because water was locked as special territory, forcing physical beasts to swing awkwardly with their weaker mystic side. Ground types punched through Rock Slide physically, yet Ice stayed forever special, dooming speedy slashers like Sneasel to fizzle out on their own frosty claws. The split cracked that open. Suddenly, Waterfall became a physical torrent, letting Gyarados slam foes with its raw hydraulic fury, or STAB surging through veins built for smashing, not sorcery. Sneasel, that wicked weasel with Ice Dark heritage, could now wield Ice Punch or Ice Shard as physical strikes, blades of frost extending from its slashing arms instead of distant beams sapping its edge. Fighting types felt this liberation most acutely, bursting free from their eternal brawler cage. Pre-split, every karate chop, every high jump kick demanded touch. Your Pokémon lunging in, risking recoil, burns from Will-O-Wisp, or the sting of Rocky Helmet. They were prisoners of proximity, normal's tougher cousins, but no less chained to the body. Then came close combat, a Gen 4 behemoth of a physical move, 120 base power that pulverizes defenses but leaves your fighter exposed, special defense and defense dropping like a felled oak. It embodied the old guard's glory, up-close devastation, the thunderous clash of bone on bone, perfect for Machamp's four-armed barrage or Conkeldurr's concrete swing. Yet across the divide rose Focus Blast, the special saviour. 120 power again, but hurled as a searing orb of key energy, no contact required. It grazed 90 accuracies, a gamble that mirrored the focus needed to channel pure fighting spirit, without the fist's commitment. Utility incarnate for coverage against pesky darks, or steals that once walled fighting entirely. This wasn't just balance tweaks. It rewrote the law of combat itself. Contact moves, those physical grapples, carried intimate peril. They invited the world's backlash, rough skin tearing at the attacker, static zapping the unwary, or flame body scorching flesh mid-strike. Feel the grit, Blaziken's blaze kick connecting with a thud, only to recoil from its own flames licking back. Non-contact projection, pure detachment, energy lancing across the field like a sniper's shot. Aura Sphere, another split-era gem, never misses, a perfect blue comet of fighting, will that demands no touch, no risk. Focus Blast's pulse evoked ancient martial myths. Chai blasts from tales of wandering monks. Unreliable because true power surges from imperfect focus, a nod to the human trainers channeling it. Developers layered this into the world. Pokédex entries whispered of explosive energy for blast, fierce blows for combat, splitting the archetype into warrior and sage. Sinnoh's roster bloomed under this freedom. Infernape, the starter hybrid, juggled physical close combat with special vacuum wave, flipping between melee mauler and distant disruptor. Lucario embodied the philosophy, its Aura Sphere a staple special tool, while Meteor Mash stayed physical, steel-clad fist. Even Legends adapted, Dialga's flash cannon turned special for its draconic roar. Roar of Time, a physical time rift punch. Competitive battles exploded with nuance. No longer could you badge a Pokémon by type alone. A bulky special wall like Dusknoir now dreaded physical shadow, sneak from Sneaselkin, while Gyarados swept with Dragon Dance into physical waterfall spam, its Intimidate roar amplified by moves matching its brawn. Deeper still, the split echoed Pokémon's evolutionary soul. Early designs funneled first-stage mons toward physical normals, Leer Tackle, reserving special elemental fury for fully evolved forms. The split honoured that, letting primal urges shine. Gyarados, evolved from feeble Magikarp leaps, finally thrashed with physical cascades, true to its rampage lore. Sneasel, clawing from icy lairs, slashed with physical ice without betraying its speed demon heart. Lore fluttered in the Pokédex margins. Fighting moves, now split between brutal body slams and beams of destructive energy, hinting at a hidden schism in dojos worldwide. Were contact arts the ancient way, forged in arenas of sweat and scars, or did non-contact herald a new era, trainers teaching Pokémon to project souls like psychic yogis? Yet this power came laced with poetry. Close combat's debuffs punished over-reliance on the body. A reminder that endless brawling wears the spirit thin, just as Hyper Beam's recharge forced respite after raw discharge. Focus Blast's miss rate, a lore wink to the mental strain of untethered force, energy scattering if your focus wavers under pressure. In the anime, Ash's Infernape unleashed close combat in a blaze of fury, fists blurring, while Paul's upheld Focus Blast as tactical precision, spheres arcing like judgment. Game Freak wove it into mechanics. Tutors taught low kicks weight-based physics physically, while Special Dark Pulse throbbed from afar. The split didn't just buff types, it deepened the mythos. Contact as visceral bond, projection as godlike distance. As we trace these fault lines of force, the pulses begin to stir, vibrations that bridge the split's gaps, igniting dragonfire in ways that will redefine energy's roar. Tune in next for Chapter 8, Pulses and Dragonfire, where shockwaves and mythical breaths pulse with secrets that could reshape your understanding of Pokémon's hidden heart. As Generation 4 shattered the old chains, binding moves to their types, special attackers like dragon types finally broke free, unleashing energies that had simmered unspoken for years. Dragon Pulse arrived in 2006, not as a mere addition to the roster, but as a seismic refinement, a way to weaponize the raw mythical essence of dragons into something precise, vibrational, and unstoppable. Picture the ancient draconic legends whispered through Pokémon lore. Dragons didn't just breathe fire in endless streams, they pulsed it. A breath move, like Dragon Breath from Generation 2, flows as a continuous exhale, a hazy mist of scalding paralysis that lingers and corrodes. It's primal, wasteful, tied to the beast's lungs and fury. But a pulse? That's evolution refined. Dragon Pulse erupts as a concentrated shockwave, a booming ring of violet dragon force that ripples outward, crushing without the drag of recharge or recoil. 85 base power. Special category, born from the split that let dragons channel their mystic aura not through fangs or claws, but through pure, pulsating myth. This wasn't arbitrary. Generation 4's designers, fresh from liberating fighting moves like Focus Blast, turned to dragons starving for special options. Before the split, dragon-type attacks leaned physical, Outrage, Dragon Claw, brute force for the body. Now, Dragon Pulse elevated the spirit, a weapon honed for legendaries like Rayquaza or the looming shadows of Dialga and Palkia. In battles, it hums with that low resonant thrum, the air warping as if the fabric of reality shudders under draconic will. Yet the true genius lies deeper, in how pulses bridge the gap to biological destiny. Take Aura Sphere, that Generation 4 harbinger of never-miss spiritual energy. A special fighting move, 90 base power, it homes in unerringly, guided by the user's aura, the invisible life force every Pokémon carries. No evasion, no dodge, it pierces like judgment from the ether. Developers drew from Lucario's steel-fighting duality, making it a beacon for locked-on power. Aura Sphere proved you could forge energy that sought its mark, defying chance. Dragon Pulse built on that foundation, but infused it with draconic myth. Vibrations that don't just hit, they resonate through the target's core, disrupting on a molecular level. And then there's Poipole, this ultra beast from Alola, a toxic hatchling buzzing with otherworldly poison, couldn't evolve on instinct alone. In Generation 7, Game Freak made Dragon Pulse a literal gatekeeper for its growth. Poipole must learn it, absorb that pulsing dragon essence, before Ultra Burst transforms it into Naganadel, the winged leviathan with drills for fangs. Moves as biological imperatives, not flavor text but code etched into its DNA. Without the pulse, no wings, no evolution. It's as if the move rewires the creature, infusing mythical dragonfire into its veins, turning poison into poised devastation. Imagine a fledgling Ultra Beast, quivering in the ultra space haze, suddenly pulsing violet rings, clicking into adulthood through learned power. This pulse motif echoed backward and forward. Water Pulse had debuted in Hoen Generation 3, with its rippling aqua rings that confuse as they crash, 60 power, 20% haze of the mind. A softer precursor, expanding water beyond waterfalls and beams into wave-like status. But Dragon Pulse sharpened the blade, making pulses the new frontier for mythical refinement. Dragons weren't content with breaths anymore. They demanded pulses to dominate the special spectrum. In the anime, you see it unfold, Naganadel's wings slicing air as Dragon Pulse booms, a testament to that forced evolution. Competitive play embraced it too, pairing with Dragon Dance for sweeps or choice specs for overkill. Yet the lore whispers more, pulses as Dragonfire evolved. Not roaring infernos, but contained infernos, fire distilled into vibrational fury, ready to ignite the battlefield without consuming the user. We've traced breaths to pulses, into Aura's homing truth to Dragon Evolution's key. But what happens when that energy coalesces not into waves but spheres, charged plasmas, and shadowy orbs waiting to hurl their chaos? That's the storm brewing in orbs of plasma and shadow. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. As Dragon Pulse refined mythical energy into rippling shockwaves that could literally reshape a Pokemon's biology, like Poipole blooming into Naganadel through that vibrational trigger. trainers began to notice a subtler shift in battlefields across Unova. Energy wasn't just exploding outward anymore. It was condensing, coiling into perfect spheres that hung in the air like captured lightning or trapped night itself. These were the Orbs, born from plasma and shadow, where raw force met precision. Electro Ball arrived in Generation 5, 2010, not as a fixed blast but as a variable storm, its power swelling from 60 to 150 based on one unyielding factor: the user's speed crushing against the target's sluggishness. Picture it, a Pikachu blurring past a lumbering Snorlax, the sheer kinetic rush compressing electrons into a dense plasma core. This isn't mere electricity arcing wildly, it's physics bent to Pokémon will, where velocity builds electrical mass, turning motion into a heavier, deadlier charge. The faster you outpace your foe, the more ions pack into that glowing orb, in amplifying voltage until it detonates with disproportionate fury. Developers at Game Freak crafted this as Unova's 92 new moves demanded innovation, rewarding agile electric types like Jolteon or Electrode, whose bodies naturally vibrate at frequencies that supercharge the sphere's density. You can almost feel the air thicken around it, humming with the promise of overload. That spherical perfection tells a story all its own. Unlike the linear sear of a beam or the expanding ripple of a pulse, Orbs embody containment, elemental essence forged into handheld worlds of peril. Electro Ball's violet-blue globe pulses with contained plasma, edges crackling as if straining against invisible bonds, a visual cue to the science beneath. Kinetic energy fueling relativistic effects, where speed mimics mass in electric fields. Shadow Ball mirrors this in darkness, debuting back in Generation 2, 1999, as a murky violet sphere of ectoplasm, launched from ethereal hands to erode defenses by 20% on impact. These aren't sloppy globs. They're sculpted, hovering threats that demand you watch their slow, deliberate arc, building dread with every inch. Shadow Ball didn't start as the ghost-type cornerstone it became. In those early Johto days, psychic dominance choked the meta, Alakazam sweeping teams untouched, Mewtwo looming eternal. Game Freak responded with Dark and Ghost expansions, and Shadow Ball emerged as a niche counter, 80 base power, slicing through psychic immunities, while dropping special defense to crack those haughty walls. Gengar hurled it first in the anime, a spectral prankster turning graveyards into arsenals. But competitively, it lingered on the edges until the physical special split in Generation 4 unlocked its potential. Suddenly, special attackers like Gengar or Mismagius wield it universally, not just as a revenge killer, but as coverage against Ghost's own weaknesses, essential for any balanced squad. What began as a scalpel for psychic overreach evolved into a Swiss Army knife, demanded in every draft because no team survives without piercing that ghostly veil. This orb obsession ties deeply to Pokémon physiology, as if certain bodies were sculpted for spherical manifestation. Round forms dominate. Ghastly's gaseous haze naturally beads into Shadow Balls, its lack of solidity letting shadows pool without form. Haunter's detached hands cradle the orb like a dark sun, fingers elongating in mid-throw for that perfect spin. On the electric side, Voltorb and Electrode mimic the shape outright, their ball-like shells channeling internal storms into external copies, evolution favouring spheres for efficient plasma containment. Even Rotom's plasma core, buzzing within appliances, spits orbs that echo its own orbish heart. These aren't coincidences, they're biological imperatives, where anatomy aligns with energy projection, tails whipping to accelerate throws, mouths exhaling to inflate the core. Watch a Mimikyu lob a Shadow Ball. Its ragged cloth bulges, the orb birthing from hidden malice, body and move in symphonic resonance. You'll sense this pattern across the decks. Jellicent's watery orbs, foreshadowing later evolutions, but Plasma and Shadow set the template, spheres as the ultimate expression of elemental focus. trainers whisper of hidden lore, like how Electro Ball's scaling hints at Pokédex entries on speed as life's accelerator, or Shadow Ball's drops evoking erosion of the soul itself. From Unova labs, where scientists marveled at speed mass conversions, to Johto graveyards, where ghosts reclaimed the night. These orbs reshaped how power, not as chaos spilled but as mastery bottled. And as these spheres fade into the ether, leaving battlefields scarred by plasma burns and spectral chills, we edge towards something far more insidious. Chapter 10. The sinister side of status unveils how Pokémon turns victory into lingering torment. Statuses that don't just hurt but haunt, twisting foes long after the orb bursts. You won't want to miss the venomous grip waiting just beyond. Shadow Ball doesn't just strike, it lingers, sapping the very essence of a foe's resilience with that creeping defense drop. But what if the real terror wasn't in the impact, but in the invisible chains that bind afterward? Status conditions, those subtle saboteurs of Pokémon battles, emerge from the shadows of Generation 1 as mere annoyances, faint purple hazes or drowsy yawns that barely disrupted the raw clash of claws and flames. Back in 1996, poison started as a whisper. Moves like poison powder dusted opponents with a 10% infliction chance, turning battles into slow grinds where a Rattata might nibble away at health over turns. Sleep was even more fickle. Sing from Jigglypuff lulling foes with a bubbly lullaby, Hypnosis swirling eyes into spirals, but both vanished after 1 to 7 turns, often shrugged off like a bad nap. Trainers dismissed them as crutches for the weak, distractions from the thunderous hyper beams and earthquakes dominating the meta. Yet these were the seeds of something far deadlier, evolving alongside the games themselves into win conditions that could topple legends without landing a single, super effective hit. By Generation 2, Poison sharpened its fangs. Toxic debuted in 1999, not as a powder or sting, but a virulent sludge that started weak and ramped up catastrophically. Double damage each turn, stacking until it chewed through even Blissey's endless HP like acid through steel. What makes Toxic's lore so chilling is its ubiquity. Game Freak designed it as a move etched into the primal instincts of nearly every Pokémon species. Through TM06, it spread like a plague across dexes, from Bulbasaur's lineage to the ferocity of Tyranitar, even seeping into steel types that once laughed at status. Ancient scrolls in the Pokémon world might whisper of it as the curse of the wild, a survival tool every creature once instinctively wielded, passed down through evolutions like a genetic scar. In the anime, James's wheezing exhales it as a choking fog, but in lore it's the equalizer that kept herds in check, ensuring no single beast dominated the food chain unchecked. Sleep, too, shed its nursery rhyme innocence. Moves like Spore from Parasect guaranteed slumber with 100% accuracy, locking titans like Dragonite in dreamless voids for turns on end. Competitive minds realised the truth. Why blast when you can stall? A Snorlax under Sleepclaw's abuse? Or later, hearing setup sweepers like Jengar weaving Hypnosis into endless paralysis loops, turned battles into sieges. These weren't nuisances anymore. They were scalpels, carving victory from attrition while your Mewtwo flails helplessly. The battlefield itself warped under this sinister tide with entry hazards, those insidious traps rewriting the lore of every switch-in. Spikes rolled out in Generation 2, sharp crystalline shards that lacerated incoming Pokémon, quarter damage on first entry, half on second, full devastation by the third. But Stealth Rock in Generation 4 elevated it to mythic status. Not mere spikes, but levitating boulders infused with rock-type essence, slamming every entrant for 12.5% damage, scaled by type weakness. Suddenly the field pulsed with peril. Trainers visualized the arena as a minefield, where swapping your frail special attacker meant inviting doom. Lore ties these to ancient ruins, stealth rock evoking the silent guardians of Sinnoh's spear pillars, eternally grinding down intruders. Spikes, barbed thickets from Kanto's undergrowth, now weaponized. Hazards flipped momentum. A single layer could whittle a team to bones before the first attack flew. Psychological barbs twisted the knife deeper. Taunt, born in Hoen's Generation 3, silenced setup artists mid-rant, forcing brash attacks over swords dances or calm minds. Imagine your opponent's Gyarados rearing for Dragon Dance, only to lash out futilely as you smirk. Torment doubled down, a mental snare from the same era, blocking repeated moves and unraveling strategies built on bullet seed barrages or focus punches. These weren't physical wounds. They infiltrated the mind, goading rage, shattering focus. In the lore, they're echoes of mischievous spirits, taunt from prankster Ipom lineages, torment the whisper of Zoroark illusions fraying sanity. Competitive play became chess with venom. A well-timed taunt on a belly drum user meant watching their boosted rage fizzle into normals, while torment starved sweepers of their rhythm. This evolution peaked in the status arms race, where Poison's relentless tick, Sleep's iron grip, Hazard's welcoming wounds, and mind games forged unbreakable control. Teams rose and fell not on firepower, but on who mastered the unseen war, the slow poison that felled gods, the slumber that silenced storms. You felt that chill, haven't you? The moment a foe's Charizard twitches under Toxic, rocks grinding its wings on switching. Well, but the innovations didn't stop there. Stay with me for Chapter 11, the Unova innovation, where Generation 5 unleashes moves that bend reality itself, power scaling with your very speed, and ghostly orbs that demand universal respect. What hidden mechanics will redefine the fight? While Toxic's venomous reach tainted almost every Pokémon in the known world, turning even the mightiest beasts into stumbling wrecks, Unova dared to rethink power itself. No longer just raw force or clever status. Here, a move's strength could swell or shrink based on the heat of battle, mirroring the chaos of real combat where speed, weight, and hidden ailments twisted every clash. Generation 5 burst onto the scene in 2010 with 92 fresh moves, but the true spark lay in their fluidity. Take Electro Ball, that crackling electric orb we traced back through Plasma's glow. Its voltage didn't sit fixed. It surged from 60 to a blistering 150 power, depending on how much faster your Pokémon outran the foe. Picture a jittery Emolga zipping circles around a lumbering Conkeldurr. The ball expands into a thunderous sphere, frying circuits before they spark. Slower targets? A mere tingle, forcing trainers to weigh pursuit against peril. This wasn't static damage anymore. It pulsed with variables demanding you read the rhythm of the field. That scaling spirit rippled outward. Grass Knot, born a generation earlier, but honed in Unova's gyms, crushed heavier opponents under verdant vines, up to 120 power against a Rhyperia's bulk, fading to a whisper on a Pidgey's wings. Low Kick followed suit, in its force hinging on mass alone, a judo flip that toppled titans but bounced harmlessly off feathers. And then Hex, oh Hex, that ghostly curse doubled its 80 power if the target languished under any status, be it Poison's Burn or Sleep's Haze. From Toxic's legacy sprang this opportunistic wraith, preying on weakness like a shadow in the fog. Unova whispered to trainers, adapt or be left in the dust. But the pinnacle of this innovation gleamed in the pledges: Fire Pledge, Water Pledge, Grass Pledge. These weren't lone strikes. Command 3 compatible Pokémon to unleash them in sequence, and they fused into a spectacle of combined might. Fire and Water birthed Sea of Fire, a blazing inferno that scorched foes for 4 turns while halving their evasion. Water and Grass summoned Swamp, bogging enemies in mud that sapped speed. a fire and grass, burning field, where flames lingered and boosted fire moves bite, each starter's essence, Tepig's blaze, Oshawott torrent, Snivy's verdant whip, intertwined not just in power, but in ritual. Lore paints them as ancient oaths, sworn by Unova's heroes to shield the land, their energies merging like rivers into a storm. In battle, the screen flares with elemental harmony, a testament to unity over solitude. This shift echoed beyond mechanics, seeping into the game's very soul. Remember the puff of smoke when a Pokémon forgot a move? That simple poof from the first 4 generations, evoking mystery, a vanish into ether, gave way to ta-da in Unova. A flourish, a reveal, like a magician's grand comeback. No more disappearance into shadow. Now, every erasure birthed possibility, with flair. Or it mirrored the region's brighter palette, skyscrapers piercing pastel skies, heroes striding with purpose. Gone was Johto's gloom, or Sinnoh's myths half-shrouded. Unova declared Pokémon battles a stage of triumph, where even loss flipped to wonder. Developers at Game Freak signalled it subtly. The series was evolving from gritty survival to spectacle, from Poof's finality to Tardar's promise. Amid this renaissance stood the Swords of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion, and their young ward Keldeo. Legends born of Unova's primal fury, they rose against human tyranny, blades forged to defend the weak. Cobalion, the noble steed of steel and justice, led with unyielding resolve. Terrakion charged mountains asunder, its rocky horns a battering ram. Virizion danced through glades, swift and elegant, thorns guarding the wilds. Together, they embodied the pledge's spirit, warriors who fought not alone, but as one. Their crown jewel, secret sword, Keldeo's signature strike, unveiled only in its resolute form. A special fighting move, slicing through 80 power, ignoring defences to carve at raw bulk. Unlike brute close combat, it whispered through special attackers' arsenals, a blade of hidden psychic force masked as martial prowess. Lore ties it to the Sword's Oath, concealed until the young cult proved worthy, emerging in a blaze of azure light during Black and White's climax. In the anime, Keldeo clashes with Kyurem, the sword flashing like frozen lightning, symbolising growth from fledgling to legend. Even competitively, it pierced steel walls, a scalpel in a world of hammers. These innovations didn't just tweak battles, they redefined strategy's dance. Dynamic scaling forced scouts to memorise stat sheets, pledges demanded team synergy, and Secret Sword upended type matchups. Unova's 92 editions layered risk onto reward, where a Pokémon's plight fueled Hex's haunt, or Velocity birthed Electro Ball's storm. Feel the arena shift under your feet, the ground tilts with Grassnot's weight, flames roar in pledged unison, swords gleam with unspoken vows. As Unova's variables wove chaos into art, a new grace awaited on the horizon, one that would rewrite weakness into whimsy. Tune in next for Chapter 12, the fairy tale ending, where enchantment claims the throne you've never seen coming. As Generation 5 wrapped up its experiments with scaling power and synergistic pledges like Fire Pledge, blending flames into lasting rain, the Pokémon world stood on the brink of its most enchanting upheaval yet. Dragons had reigned supreme for over a decade, their raw might shredding through teams with our pulse after unrelenting pulse, leaving trainers scrambling for any counter that could pierce their armoured hides. Then in 2013, with the launch of Pokémon X and Y, Game Freak unveiled the fairy type. Not just a new category, but a deliberate fairy tale reckoning designed to humble those ancient behemoths. Picture the Kalos region, where elegant spires and blooming gardens whispered of forgotten myths. Fairies emerged as ethereal guardians, their essence drawn from moonlit glades and star-kissed petals. This type didn't merely resist dragon assaults, it turned them aside like whispers against a castle wall, immune to the draconic fury that had defined battles since Black and White. Sylveon, evolving from the unassuming Eve, through bonds of affection, embodied this shift, its ribbons weaving spells that mocked the thunderous roars of Salamence or Garchomp. Dragons, once the apex predators of the type chart, found their pulses and tails clipped overnight, forcing competitive scenes to rethink entire strategies around this pink-hued revolution. At the heart of Fairy's arsenal pulsed two signature blasts, Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. Moonblast, a special fairy move with 95 base power, conjured the raw poetry of a midnight sky. Trainers described it as channeling lunar essence itself. Imagine a Pokémon like Clefable drawing silvery motes from the heavens, compressing them into a radiant orb that detonates on impact, sapping the target's special attack as if the moon's gravity tugged at their very spirit. In the lore woven through Pokédex entries, this wasn't mere energy, it was celestial retribution, a beam born from fairy queens who once danced under eternal eclipses, their light weaving through shadows to purify draconic corruption. Battles in the anime amplified this, with Serena's Sylveon unleashing Moonblast in showers of glittering dust, each particle humming with ancient balladry. Dazzling Gleam followed suit, but with a brighter, more explosive flare, another 95 power special attack that bathed foes in prismatic radiance. Where Moonblast evoked quiet nocturnes, Dazzling Gleam roared like a festival of fireworks, light refracting through fairy wings to blind and bruise. Its lore tied to woodland sprites and urban pixies alike, entries hinting at gleams harvested from dawn's first blush or city neon twisted into magical prisms. Gardevoir hurled it as a sweeping arc of luminescence, while Togekiss spiraled through the air, trailing sparks that lingered like fireflies in a dream. Together, these moves formed Fairy's light-based combat doctrine. Not brute force, but an otherworldly elegance that outmaneuvered Dragon Rage by striking at the soul. Game Freak didn't stop at fresh creations. They reached back through time, retrofitting old moves with newfound fairy magic. Take Play Rough, a physical 90-power brawler, originally normal type since Generation 4. Overnight, it blossomed into fairy, its roughhousing infused with playful enchantments. Now a Sylveon could tumble foes with giggles that masked bone-crushing force, dropping their attack as enchanted bruises bloomed. Covert and Last Resort, once mundane normal staples, gained fairy sheen, their desperation laced with whimsical theft or sacrificial sparkles. Even Bounce, that quirky flying trampoline from Generation 3, flipped to fairy in some learn sets, turning mid-air flips into spells that lured prey into vulnerability. These changes weren't arbitrary. Pokédex revisions imbued them with lore of enchanted games and fairy pranks, transforming everyday antics into mythic takedowns. The crowning innovation arrived through abilities like Pixelate, debuting in Generation 6 alongside Mega Evolutions. Held by Pokémon such as Sylveon or Florges, Pixelate seized normal-type moves and alchemized them into fairy energy, boosting their power by 20% while cloaking attacks in that signature sparkle. Hyper Voice, once a deafening normal screech at 90 power, became a fairy symphony under Pixelate. Waves of melodic pink sound crashing like a choir of sprites, shredding dragon defenses with amplified grace. Return and Frustration, staples of affection-fueled fury, twisted into Hyper Voice's fairy kin, their emotional payloads now laced with pixie dust. In lore, this ability evoked ancient pacts where normal beasts pledged to fairy courts, their roars reborn as lullabies that shattered scales. Competitive play exploded with Sylveon's Pixelate Hyper Voice setups, turning what was once reliable coverage into a dragon-slaying juggernaut. Deeper still, Fairy's arrival rippled through the type chart's hidden histories. Moves like Draining Kiss siphoned life with vampiric tenderness, its 75 power special drain, pulling vitality through affectionate lips. Entries, speaking of sirens who healed by stealing kisses from weary warriors. Misty terrain's veils blocked status ailments, a field effect conjuring fogs of petal dew that grounded dragons in harmless fluff. Retroactive tweaks even touched steel and poison. Fairies' dual immunities ensuring it danced unscathed through webs and blades. Imagine the forums ablaze in 2013, trainers dissecting how disarming voice, a sound-based fairy nuke, ignoring evasion, echoed the silent spells of folklore. Its 70 power delivered with a disarmingly cute trill. This fairy tale ending wasn't without shadows. Dragons adapted, gaining fairy moves like Draco Meteor's special cousins. But the balance tipped decisively. Kalos legendaries like Xerneas embodied the type's life-giving core, its horns channeling fairy boons that revived allies mid-battle. Moonblast's animations evolved across generations, from Gen 6's starry bursts to Sword and Shield's holographic flares, each iteration deepening the celestial mythos. Dazzling Gleam's global spread saw it on over 100 Pokémon by Scarlet and Violet, a testament to its versatile gleam. Yet, as Fairy's magic settled into the meta, trainers hungered for even grander spectacles, crystals that amplified moves to cataclysmic heights. Up next, Chapter 13, Xer moves and ultimate power, where the sparkle turns supernova. Fairies may have clipped the wings of dragons, but in the sun-soaked islands of Alola, trainers discovered a force that transcended types altogether. A raw, unified surge where human will and Pokémon spirit fused into one earth-shattering blow. This was the Z move, born from an ancient Alolan legend, whispered among kahunas and trial captains. Picture the moment. A trainer slips a gleaming Z crystal into their Z ring. The air thickens with anticipation, and they strike that iconic pose, arms thrusting skyward, body twisting in a dance older than the islands themselves. Energy crackles, visible as radiant auras clashing like storm clouds, channeling the trainer's very heartbeat into their Pokémon strike. It's not just a move, it's a ritual, a pact where the boundary between partner and human dissolves, unleashing power that could level mountains or swallow oceans in a single instant. The Z crystals themselves hold the deepest mystery. Harvested from the fractured edges of ultra space, these gems pulse with otherworldly light, each one attuned to a type, from the scorching infernape of fire to the abyssal void of black hole eclipse for ghost. Legends say they were gifts from Tapu Guardians, fragments of the cosmos embedded in Alola's volcanic soil, waiting for worthy bonds to awaken them. To use one, you don't just command, you synchronize. The crystal resonates with your Pokémon's move, amplifying it 100-fold, but only once per battle. Miss the pose, fumble the ring, and the power fizzles. A reminder that true strength demands harmony, not dominance. Generation 7 introduced 35 of these behemoths, each a visual symphony that pushed Pokémon battles into cinematic overload. Gone were the pixelated clashes of old. Now screens erupted in kaleidoscopic fury. Gigavolt Havoc for Electric tore the sky with lightning webs spanning horizons. Devastating Drake for Dragon summoned meteoric tempests that reshaped the battlefield. And for those rare steel moments, Snipe Shot's supersonic sky strike pierced clouds like a divine arrow, trails of vapor lingering like comet tails. Battles became spectacles of light and shadow, where every Z-move activation halted time itself, crowds in the anime gasping as arenas quaked, Pokémon silhouettes glowing ethereal before the cataclysm. Take Breakneck Blitz, the all-purpose normal Z-move, a blur of hyper-accelerated fury. Your Pokémon vanishing into a streak of pure velocity before slamming home with the force of a meteor. Or Ocean's Wrath for Water, where tidal waves rise from nowhere, curling impossibly high before crashing in a froth of azure destruction. These weren't mere power boosts, they redefined spectacle with animations so lavish they strained the hardware of three-dimensional Switch models. Developers at Game Freak poured resources into particle effects, screen shake, and orchestral swells, making each activation feel like the climax of an epic tale. 35 moves, each tailored to a type's essence, turned competitive play into a fireworks display. Strategists plotting Z-move slots like generals arming nukes. Yet amid this legendary arsenal, one stands out for its sheer absurdity: Snorlax's pulverizing pancake. Imagine the colossal sleepyhead, belly distended like a storm cloud, rocketing upward on thermal updrafts before plummeting back as a pancake of doom. What begins as a goofy flip, arms pinwheeling, grin wide as the horizon, ends in a seismic squash that craters the earth, shockwaves rippling outward. Base power rivaling Arceus's judgment, yet delivered with the whimsy of a cartoon. It's Alola's humour shining through. Even ultimate power gets a wink, a reminder that, in Pokemon's world, the mightiest strikes can come wrapped in laughter. Snorlax, that eternal glutton from Kanto's earliest days, elevated to god tier via Z-power, flattening foes under its bulk, while the crowd erupts in cheers. This ritualistic pinnacle marked Alola's gift to the Pokemon saga, a bridge from type matchups to soul-deep synergy. Trainers like Ash mastered it through trial and error, their bonds glowing brightest in clutch moments. While Kahuna's guarded secrets of crystal attunement passed down through island chants. Z-moves didn't just expand movesets, they wove trainers into the lore, making every battle a personal legend etched in crystal light. But as Alola's stars faded, a new colossal wave crested on the horizon, one that dwarfed even these ultimate strikes. Tune in next for Chapter 14, the Gigantamax Surge, where Pokemon didn't just power up, they transformed the battlefield into a realm of titans. While Alola's Z-moves fused a trainer's spirit with their Pokemon through shimmering crystals, Galar tapped into something far more ancient and volatile, a surging energy hidden beneath the earth itself, ready to erupt in the heat of battle. In the stadiums of Galar, where crowds roar under stadium lights mimicking starry skies, and Pokemon don't just strike harder, they swell to colossal sizes, their forms twisting into behemoths that shake the ground. This is Dynamax, a phenomenon born from power spots scattered across the region. Veins of raw Dynamax energy pulsing like the planet's hidden heartbeat. But the true spectacle, the Gigantamax Surge, takes it further. Select Pokemon don't merely enlarge, they metamorphose entirely, sprouting wild new features, armoured shells, or whipping tendrils that redefine their essence for those fleeting moments of dominance. Picture a Cinderace, usually a sleek kicker, ballooning into a towering forge of flame, its legs fusing into piston-like blasters. Or a Butterfree, delicate wings unfurling into a psychedelic storm cloud, raining hypnotic spores. Gigantamax isn't random growth, it's a genetic echo, awakening dormant patterns unique to each species, as if the Pokémon recalls a primordial ancestor forged in cataclysmic fires. Developers in Generation 8 drew from Galar's industrial grit and mythic wild areas, where wild Dynamax battles rage unchecked, hinting at a lore tied to an otherworldly invader that scorched the land eons ago. At the core of this surge lie the Max moves, where everyday attacks transcend into cataclysmic forces that warp the battlefield itself. A simple waterfall crashes into Max Geyser, erupting pillars of torrential rain across the field, drenching everything in a 5-turn downpour that supercharges all water-type strikes. Feel the mist rising, the air thickening with humidity as droplets hammer down like a monsoon unleashed. Strategists prize this not just for the deluge, but for the subtle edge it grants, amplifying the type that flows from the depths. Then there's Max Knuckle, born from punches like Close Combat or Brick Break, where the fighter's fist connects not with flesh, but with the air itself, sending shockwaves that rally every ally on your side. Their attack stats spike by one stage, a collective surge of adrenaline rippling through the team, turning a solo brawler into a symphony of empowered strikes. Lore whispers of ancient gladiators in Galar's foggy highlands, where warriors channeled earth and fury through their blows, leaving craters that became the power spots we know today. These secondary buffs aren't accidents. They're the Surge's gift, rewarding bold risks with team-wide momentum that can flip a losing raid. Every type bends to this power. Max Hailstorm from ice moves blankets the arena in blizzards. Max Quake from ground rends fissures that boost ground attacks, each one layering the field with hazardous terrain that lingers, punishing foes who dare linger too long. Fire becomes Max Flare, a solar inferno scorching for 5 turns. Electric sparks into Max Lightning, crackling storms empowering thunderbolts. The transformation demands precision. Only Pokémon at peak strength can harness it, and the energy pulls from the environment, not the user alone, echoing Gala's theme of harmony with a restless land. But Gigantamax elevates this to signatures that etch a species' soul into legend. G-Max moves, exclusive to those rare giants, carry bespoke devastation. Take G-Max Hydro Sniper from the Inteleon line, a watery barrage that ignores substitute barriers, piercing defenses like a covert operative's silenced shot. Or G-Max Chai Strike from the Urshifu evolutions, a spectral palm that never misses, landing critical hits with unerring fate, as if the Tengu spirits of old demand perfection. Venusaur's G-Max Vine Lash ensnares in thorny prisons, draining life while blocking escape. Charizard's G-Max. Wildfire smoulders eternally, chipping away at health even after the giant fades. These aren't mere power grabs, they're identity distilled. Pikachu's G-Max Volt Crash courses electric terror that paralyzes the field, a nod to its mascot legacy turned apocalyptic. Kingler's G-Max Foam burst foam's oceans of scalding bubbles, lowering speed across the board, evoking tidal claws crushing ships in Galar's stormy seas. Each G-Max move ties to the Pokemon's lore. Corvic Knight's G-Max Steel Surge rains razor feathers, a knight's aerial bombardment. Centiskorch's G-Max Centifierno engulfs in infernos that spare allies, a living furnace train roaring through coal-blackened valleys. Yet this power comes at a cost, woven into the Surge's very fabric. Dynamax and Gigantamax last only 3 turns, a ticking clock that builds unbearable strain on the Pokemon's body. Muscles scream under impossible mass, bones creak like ancient oaks in a gale, energy reserves depleting in a haze of exhaustion. Post-battle, they collapse into healing pods, trainers watching anxiously as the gigantism recedes, leaving tremors in their limbs. Lore speaks of wild Pokémon shunning power spots after botched surges, their forms scarred, a reminder that Gala's gift is double-edged. Hubris invites ruin, as seen in Tales of the Darkest Day, when unchecked energy birthed endless nights. Trainers master this dance in Max Raid dens, where cooperative fury pulls Dynamax against crystalline overlords, or in Champion Cups where Leon's Charizard surges eternal. The secondary buffs turn tides. Imagine Max Knuckle igniting a chain of boosted assaults, or Max Geyser drowning dragon types mid-soar. Strategists layer these with terrain mastery, chaining weather shifts to outpace rivals, the field becoming a living chessboard of rain-slicked stones and electrified winds. As Galar's surge fades into legend, whispers emerge from mist-shrouded peaks of older powers, techniques etched in Hishuan stone before types were named or giants walked. In our next chapter, Ancient Techniques of Hisui, we'll unearth rituals that predate the surge, and where moves weren't amplified but awakened from the bones of the earth itself. What forgotten arts could rival Dynamax's roar? While Galar's max moves reshaped battlefields, with their explosive surges turning everyday attacks into cataclysmic forces, trainers in the ancient land of Hisui faced a far more primal reckoning, one where every strike carried the weight of survival, against beasts that could shatter mountains or summon storms without mercy. In those shadowed eras, long before the polished arenas of today, Pokémon didn't unleash moves in the rigid patterns we know. They channeled them through two fierce variants, strong style and agile style. Picture a Hishuan warrior, breath ragged in the biting wind, commanding their partner to adopt strong style. Here raw power swelled, the move's force doubled, Chichiku crushing foes with devastating impact, but at a cost. The attacker staggered, locked in place for the next turn, vulnerable as a wounded prey. It was a gamble of dominance, perfect for overwhelming a lumbering noble like the thunderous Electrode, whose discharge in strong style could level a village hut in one thunderous clap. Agile style flipped the script entirely. Speed became the blade's edge. The move landed quicker, striking first with half the power of its base form, but chaining into another assault on the immediate follow-up turn. No recharge, no hesitation, just relentless pursuit. A Cleavor-wielding stone axe, in agile style, darted like lightning across jagged peaks, slashing before the enemy could blink, embodying the hit-and-run ferocity that kept ancient clans alive amid stampeding herds of weirdeer. These weren't mere mechanics, they were echoes of Hisui's brutal wilds, where battles weren't sport but raw necessity. Pokémon splintered their innate energies into these styles, birthing what chroniclers called splinter moves, fractured evolutions of primal techniques, honed in blood-soaked skirmishes. Take Colossal Claw, a splinter born from Ursaluna's earth-shaking might. In strong style, it rends with 80 base power, ignoring foe defenses as if the bear's paws cleaved through stone itself. Agile, it surges to 40, but priority lets it shred guardians before they rally. Or Dreadful Howl, Avalug's icy roar, twisted into a splinter that drops attack stats while chilling the air to bone-numbing lows. Strong for maximum debilitation, agile to howl first and flee the counterblow. This splintering revealed the savagery of early combat, yet unfiltered by later generations' balances. Foes didn't faint politely, they splintered too, pushed to breaking points, where type advantages meant little against sheer ferocity. Hisui and Typhlosion's infernal parade, a ghostly fire whirl only the ancients could master, bypassed immunities to burn souls directly, a remnant of battles where spectral flames devoured the living, leaving ashen husks amid volcanic craters. Yet amid this carnage, certain moves ensured survival, explaining why ancient species like Wyrdeer or Basculegion endured cataclysms that felled lesser kin. Psyshield Bash stands as a testament. Wyrdeer's signature strike fused brutal physical bashing with a psychic barrier that boosted its own defense upon landing. In strong style, the bash hit like a meteor, shield flaring brighter. Agile let it dart in, protect, and evade reprisal. This duality, a fence woven with unyielding guard, mirrors how Hishuan herds thrived. Noble Pokémon, warped by space-time rifts, wielded these as survival imperatives. Last respects for Hishuan Samurott tallied fallen allies' blows, each death fueling a vengeful crescendo up to 100 power, a grim ledger of pack loyalty that turned slaughter into supremacy. Double shock from Hishuan Electrode electrified both grounded and flying prey, ignoring abilities in its explosive finale, proof of adaptations that let these ancients dominate fractured ecosystems. Even terrain moves like Mystic Water Beacon summoned watery auras to heal allies, a beacon in the fog-shrouded ruins, where clans huddled against alpha predators. As Hisui's people tamed these tempests, documenting moves on etched noble plates, the styles began to converge, strong and agile faded into memory, absorbed into a standardized arsenal by the time Sinnoh's modern era dawned. What was once a whirlwind of variants streamlined into fixed priorities and powers. Hyper beams recharge, echoing strong style's lockdown. Quick attack channeling agile's haste. Splinter moves dissolved back into the pool, their brutal edges sanded smooth. Psyshield Bash, evolved into facets of today's coverage, like Zen headbutt laced with shielding flares. Trainers bridged eras through rediscovered tomes, relearning lost arts in hidden dojos, but the core shifted. No longer did every move fracture into styles. Instead, they unified, battle-tested across generations, from Kanto's raw blasts to Paldea's terrestrial twists. That unification sets the stage for energies even more volatile, where crystals shatter type norms and unleash blasts from within. In our next chapter, Terastall Energy and Terablast will uncover how Paldea's Radiant Rebellion redefined moves at their crystalline core, turning every Pokémon into a prism of untold power. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. As Hishuan's Splinter moves faded into legend, carving brutal paths through ancient battlefields, Paldea's earth began to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, revealing crystals that pulsed like captured stars beneath the surface. Deep in Area Zero, that forbidden crater at Paldea's heart, explorers first stumbled upon them. Jagged terror shards, or born from eons of pressure where time itself twisted. These weren't mere gems, they hummed with terrestrial energy, a force so pure it could rewrite a Pokémon's typing in the heat of combat. Picture a Salamence, its draconic scales fracturing into a kaleidoscope of violet light, suddenly surging with fairy essence that dragons had long feared. This Terastall phenomenon didn't just alter appearance, it pierced to the core, transforming the fundamental type of every move the Pokémon unleashed. Trainers watched in awe as a terastallized Sprigatito's leafage sliced like steel, its verdant blades gaining the unyielding edge of metal. The change was total. Every attack, every pulse of power shifted to match the chosen Terra type, drawn from those shimmering crystals embedded in a Pokémon's terastallized organ. No longer bound by birthright, a Pokémon could channel fire through a water-type frame or unleash electric fury from a grounded stance, turning weaknesses into weapons mid-battle. At the epicenter of this revolution stood Terablast, the move that embodied Paldea's boundless adaptability. Born exclusively from Terastall energy, it materialized as a radiant orb of whichever type the user embodied. No exceptions, bridging all 18 types in a single versatile strike. A terastallized Iron Valiant could hurl a fairy-type Terablast to shatter dark foes, or pivot to fighting against steel walls, its base power swelling to 90 when matching that transformed type. This wasn't random chaos, it was precision forged in Area Zero's depths, where paradox Pokémon like Walking Wake roamed, their anomalous forms hinting at the crystal's power to defy nature's laws. Those same crystals amplified everything they touched. Harvested as Terra shards, they boosted move potency when fused into gems, letting a simple ember roar into flamethrower territory, or a tackle thunder like Wild Charge. Lore whispers of ancient Paldeans who revered Area Zero as a nexus of creation, where Professor Sada and Turo's experiments unlocked Terrapagos, the turtle guardian whose shell birthed this energy. Its crystalline form, dormant for millennia, radiated a light that permeated Paldea's soil, infusing wild Pokémon with latent Terra types unique to their habitats, from sandy dunes yielding ground crystals to misty peaks birthing flying ones. But the true genius lay in how Terastall unlocked same-type attack bonus for moves that once stood apart. Take a pure, normal-type Lopunny. Its pound or return hit neutrally against most foes, lacking that crucial 50% boost. Terastallize it to fire, and suddenly every normal move erupts with fiery stab, flames licking the edges as if the crystals had rewritten its veins. Only through this transformation did mismatched attacks gain that bonus. Hyper Beam scorching as fire, Body Slam thundering as electric, elevating the ordinary to the overwhelming. Competitive battles shifted overnight. Trainers stacked Tera types to supercharge coverage moves, a Dragapult blasting Ice Tera Blast to fell grounds. It once struggled against. Area Zero's lore runs deeper still, shadowed by the paradox Pokémon that emerged from its rifts. Iron Treads, mimicking ancient Donphan with steel typing, wielded Tera Blast like a mechanical cannon, its crystals pulsing in sync with mechanical hearts. Walking Wake's water surges gained ghostly chills post-Terastallization, echoing the crater's temporal scars. These anomalies prove the crystal's influence wasn't superficial. They amplified potency across generations, from Gen 1's raw beams to Paldea's adaptive arsenal, as if Area Zero held Pokemon's evolutionary future in its glowing veins. You can feel the thrill in Paldean stadiums, where crowds hush as a Meowscarada terastallizes, its petals unfolding into dark thorns, Tera Blast ensnaring foes in shadowy vines. This energy didn't just change types, it bridged eras, letting Hisui's fierce spirits clash with modern precision under crystal light. And yet, amid these transformations, certain moves cling to their wielders like personal destinies, refusing to be tamed by any crystal's whim. Up next in Chapter 17, Signature Moves and Identity. We'll explore how these exclusive strikes forge unbreakable bonds, revealing the hidden souls of Pokémon that no Terastall glow can fully eclipse. While Tera Blast bends reality to cloak itself in any type imaginable, some moves refuse to yield their essence. They bind themselves eternally to a single Pokémon or a rare bloodline, carving out identities as sharp and unyielding as a dragon's claw. Take Volt Tackle, the electrifying crown jewel of Pikachu's arsenal. Born in Generation 3, this reckless charge doesn't just deliver 150 base power wrapped in sparks, it demands a price from its user, 20% recoil that mirrors the wild fury of a cornered electric mouse. Pikachu, the eternal mascot, didn't earn this move through evolution alone. It arrived via a special Pikachu-only tutor in the heart of Johto, a nod to its status as Ash's unbreakable partner in the anime, where it first crackled to life against the indomitable Regis. Volt Tackle isn't merely a technique, it's Pikachu's manifesto of defiance, a glowing testament that even the smallest spark can topple giants, forever linking thunderbolts to yellow cheeks and determined cries of Pika. That bond deepens when you trace Rayquaza's Dragon Ascent, a move so intertwined with the sky-high serpent that it feels pulled from the ozone itself. Debuting in Generation 6 alongside Mega Rayquaza, this flying-type plunge boasts 120 base power. But only Rayquaza could wield it at first, the prerequisite for its Mega Evolution, a ritual dive that summons Delta Winds and Ozone Rifts, echoing the lore of the Weather Trio's Eternal Guardian. In the skies above Hoen, Rayquaza doesn't just attack, it reclaims the heavens, its scales shimmering as it hurtles downward like a comet forged in primal rage. This move defines the dragon's aloof majesty, separating it from Groudon and Kyogre, not through raw might, but through aerial supremacy no other could touch. Imagine the roar of parting clouds, the shadow eclipsing the sun. Dragon Ascent isn't learned, it's awakened, a piece of Rayquaza's ozone-born soul. Yet signatures evolve, much like the Pokémon they define. What starts as an exclusive right often ripples outward, shared through the winds of time and design. Hyper Beam, that Gen 1 behemoth of a normal-type blast, once crowned legendaries like Mewtwo in the anime's thunderous clashes. Its recharge turn symbolizing the exhaustion of godlike power. By later generations, it trickled down to scores of others, from Snorlax's belly-fired volleys to Porygon Z's digital barrages. Ice Beam followed suit, freezing foes with its 10% chill since 1996, initially a staple for Lapras and Articuno, but soon chilling the move pools of Clodsire and Setitan alike. Dragon Pulse, pulsing into Generation 4 with its vibrational shockwave, began as a special dragon roar for Salamence and Flygon, even triggering Poipol's Ultra Beast evolution into Naganadel. Yet now, it thrums in the veins of Dragapult and Baxcalibur. This shift marks the heartbeat of Pokemon's expanding world. A signature's isolation gives way to inheritance, preserving lore while broadening the battlefield. At the core of this sharing lies the ancient ritual of move tutors, shadowy figures who whisper forgotten arts across generations. Picture them in hidden groves or volcanic craters, elders like the old man on Route 42 in Johto, trading shards for the bounce that once bounced only for Kangaskhan, or the Move Maniac in Sinnoh's survival area, etching Draco Meteor into the stars for those worthy. These tutors embody a lineage of secrecy, passing techniques like family heirlooms, low kicks, weight-crushing precision, once a martial whisper, now taught to generations of fighters from Gen 4 onward. In Unova, the tutor in Route 13 unveils Endeavour, the desperate equalizer born for emergencies, ensuring even underdogs carry the spark of legends. It's no mere transaction, it's a ceremony, evoking the master-apprentice bonds of ancient dojos, where moves like Volt Tackle's suicidal surge might one day electrify a protege, diluting exclusivity but igniting new stories. Through tutors, signatures transcend their originators, weaving a tapestry where Ho-Oh's sacred fire warms Entei's mane before flickering in Volcarona's wings. But not all moves bend to this generosity. Some clamp shut like a Cofagrigus tomb, belonging eternally to one lineage alone. Sketch, Smeargle's painterly curse from Generation 2, lets the artist steal any move it witnesses, forever embedding it in its palette, a one-time theft that defines the painter Pokémon as the ultimate mimic, its tail brush dripping with stolen thunder. No tutor dares replicate this. Sketch remains Smeargle's solitary domain, a lore of creative larceny that birthed Belly Drum Strats and the infamous Smeargle meta in competitive play. Chatter fares even stranger. Chatto's generation, for mimicry of human speech turned sonic assault, its power scaling with recorded phrases, a move so tied to the parrot's throat that only Chatot and its evolutions can croak it out, banned in some formats for its eerie verbosity. These anomalies whisper of deliberate design, Sketch as the artist's manifesto, Chatter as nature's cruel echo, moves engineered to fossilize identity amid the chaos of sharing. Electro Ball spins this tale further, its variable zap from Generation 5 hinging on speed supremacy, 60 to 150 power, an orb of plasma that once singed uniquely for fast electrics, like Electrode, in now orbiting Electivire's fists alongside its borrowed Volt Tackle. Shadow Ball, Ghost's ectoplasmic sphere since Johto's Psychic Purge, drops defenses with 20% spite, starting as Gengar and Misdreavus's Haunt before Spectral Hands, like Mimikyu's claimed it. Water Pulse confuses with rippling rings from Generation 3, evolving Goldine's Cascade into something hypnotic, shared yet still pulsing with Seeking's ancient flow. These orbs, pulses, beams, they start as signatures, linear blasts of hyper beam yielding to spherical legacies, their sci-fi glow adapting as Pokémon society grows. In this dance of exclusivity and dissemination, identities sharpen then soften, moves like Dragon Ascent guarding Rayquaza's throne, while tutors beckon the masses. Yet the true masters of this craft, the ones who unlock these secrets with a glance or a gift, hold even deeper enigmas. Join me next in Chapter 18, The Science of the Move Tutor, where we'll unravel how these enigmatic teachers hoard the ultimate move legacies, and what hidden evolutions await those who seek their wisdom. While signature moves like Volt Tackle or Dragon Ascent etch themselves into a Pokémon's very identity, defining legends across generations. Not every technique comes naturally at birth. Some must be taught, imprinted, or even erased from the mind's deepest recesses. This is where the move tutor emerges from the shadows, a silent architect of combat evolution, wielding the power to rewrite a Pokemon's arsenal mid-journey. Picture a dusty shack on the outskirts of a quiet town, the air thick with the scent of aged scrolls and faint ozone from latent energies. Here dwells the move deleter, a figure shrouded in perpetual twilight, his eyes gleaming with the weight of forgotten battles. In the lore whispered among trainers, he's no mere service provider, he's the guardian of Pokemon memory, the one who severs bonds to obsolete techniques. When a Pokemon learns a new move, but its 4-move limit overflows, the deleter steps in. With a grave nod and a murmured incantation, he coaxes the unwanted skill from the creature's neural pathways, watching it dissolve like mist in morning light. Generation 1 introduced this solemn rite in places like Cinnabar Island, where the deleter's shadowed corner felt like a confessional for overextended fighters. Players felt the finality, a poof of smoke in early games. He's evolving to a theatrical tada in later ones, but beneath it lay profound lore. Pokemon memories aren't infinite vaults, but fragile tapestries, prone to fraying under the strain of endless adaptation. Yet deletion is only half the equation. Across the road, or sometimes in the same hidden grove, resides the move reminder, his counterpart in restoration. This keeper of echoes delves into the Pokemon's subconscious, unearthing moves glimpsed in youth or inherited from bloodlines long past. In the Sinnoh region, he meditates by waterfalls, drawing forth levels skipped in haste. In Unova, he brews elixirs from rare berries to jog dormant synapses. Their duality forms the backbone of Pokemon cognition. Deleters prune the wild growth of experience, reminders nurture the seeds of potential. Together, they embody the science of neural plasticity in the Pokemon world, brains not rigid like human grey matter, but fluid lattices capable of reconfiguration, ensuring survival in an ever-shifting ecosystem of types and tactics. At the heart of this tutoring lies the true marvel: technical machines and hidden machines, biological software etched into crystalline discs. TMS aren't mechanical gadgets, but symbiotic media, pulsing with encoded data that interfaces directly with a Pokemon's DNA. Insert one into a compatible learner, like a trusty Kadabra absorbing Psychic, and watch the move bloom in its move pool, a permanent upgrade mimicking viral gene therapy. Their lore traces back to Generation 1, where single-use TMs shattered on first activation, a meta-choice forcing trainers to strategize scarcity. Imagine scavenging Route 11 for Bubble Beam, only to watch it crumble after teaching your Poliwhirl, mirroring real-world disposables in a game designed for collection obsession. Hidden machines took it further. Mandatory field tools like Cut or Surf, bound to progression gates, their HM permanence a double-edged sword that clogged slots until the deleter's mercy. This single-use era reigned through generations 2 and 3, a narrative of resource warfare that peaked in Hoen's vast seas and skies. Then came the pivot in Generation 4, infinite-use TMs heralding abundance. Sinnoh's developers, perhaps reflecting on player frustration, made them reusable relics, farmable from vending machines or prizes. The meta story unfolded like a dev confession. Early scarcity bred hoarding psychology, but infinity unlocked experimentation, letting trainers layer strategies without loss. Diamond and Pearl players stocked inventories endlessly, while Platinum's tutors layered heart scales for extras. Yet the wheel turned again in Scarlet and Violet, where TMs morphed into craftable blueprints at Academy workshops, blending old scarcity with new synthesis. Each iteration whispered a larger tale. Game Freak's dance with player agency, from rationed power to boundless potential, echoing how Pokémon themselves evolve from rigid forms to dynamic Gigantamax spectacles. But not all software comes from discs. Deepest in the lore simmers the egg move phenomenon, where combat techniques defy teaching altogether, woven into genetics like ancestral whispers. A Ditto paired with a Dragonite might hatch a Dratini clutching Draco Meteor, aiding a special blast no tutor offers, a vertical inheritance bypassing levels entirely. This mechanic, debuting in Generation 2 with moves like Belly Drum on Offspring, paints Pokémon reproduction as a deliberate archive. Eggs aren't blank slates but vessels of selective memory, where breeders chain breed across distant lines, Snorlax to Munchlax for Curse, or Gyarados lineage for Dragon Dance, to propagate elite skills. Scientifically, it's epigenetic sorcery, moves encoded in gametes, activated post-hatch, ensuring bloodlines carry the edge of forgotten masters. In competitive circles, this fuels dynasties, but in lore it hints at Pokémon Society's hidden meritocracy, wild packs passing thunderous legacies through clutches, untouched by human hands. Tutors extend beyond basics, evolving into specialists across eras. Generation 3's move tutors in Lava Ridge and Battle Frontier demanded shards mined from Fiery Path, like currency of forgotten flames, buying Shadow Punch or Synthesis. Heart Scales in later games unlocked submerged arts, traded from Wingull or dredged from oceans, symbolizing the ocean's role as memory's cradle. Even legendaries bow to this science. Mewtwo, born in labs, absorbs tutors to reclaim Wild Fury. The move tutor isn't just the NPC, he's the evolutionary fulcrum, bridging innate talent with acquired might, ensuring no Pokémon remains locked in its Genesis form. As we trace these threads of memory and inheritance, the boundaries blur further, moves interacting not just with minds, but with the very terrain they scorch or flood. Chapter 19, Environmental Interaction, unveils how blasts reshape battlefields and summons bend weather to will, pulling you deeper into the elemental chaos. While TMs and HMs served as those intricate biological software implants, unlocking a Pokémon's latent abilities, the hidden machines carried an extra layer of wonder. They didn't just enhance combat, they reshaped the world around you. Picture a Charmander slicing through a curtain of vines with a single, precise slash, or a Pidgeot soaring above jagged mountains to shortcut your journey across Kanto's sprawling map. These weren't mere battle tricks, they were keys to the environment itself, born from the earliest dreams of Pokémon exploration. Cut entered the scene in Generation 1 as HM01, a simple normal type move that let your Pokémon carve through skinny trees, blocking forgotten paths. Developers drew from real-world utility, echoing how hikers might use machetes, but infused it with Pokémon flair. Imagine the satisfying crunch of bark giving way, revealing hidden ledges or secret houses tucked in the wilderness. It wasn't flashy, base power of 50 in battle, but outside it symbolized taming nature's obstacles. Players grumbled about needing a dedicated cutter like the ever-reliable Farfetch'd, whose leak doubled as a blade, yet it persisted across regions, evolving slightly in later games with animations showing leaves fluttering like confetti. Fly followed as HM02, transforming travel into poetry. Debuting alongside Cut, it whisked you to any visited Pokémon Center, your bird Pokémon vanishing into a skyward spiral before rocketing back on command. Lore whispers of ancient migratory instincts, tying into flying types dominion over the skies, Pidgeot's wings cutting wind like knives, or Pharaoh's shadow eclipsing the sun below. In the anime, Ash's Pidgeotto first demonstrated it evading Team Rocket's blimps, but in games it halved backtracking drudgery from Kanto's vast routes to Johto's misty peaks. Gen 3 refined the map interface, letting you pinpoint destinations mid-flight, turning hours of walking into mere seconds of ascent. Then came Surf, HM03, the water-type wave rider that turned oceans into highways. Introduced in Generation 1, it propelled you across waters too deep for casual swims, your Pokémon summoning a colossal breaker that carried trainer and team alike. Lore paints it as harnessing tidal forces, with Blastoise or Lapras embodying oceanic majesty. base 90 power in fights. But field use evoked surfing legends, crashing waves parting for hidden seafoam islands or Cinnabar's shores. Gen 2 made it mandatory for Goldene lines, evolving the HM system, where forgetting meant braving the move deleter's gamble. By Hoen's vast seas in Gen 3, surf became synonymous with exploration freedom, animations rippling with foam and spray that drenched your screen. These field moves blurred battle and world, but as competitive play evolved, environmental chaos spilled into arenas. Double battles introduced in Generation 3's Hoen, with 103 new moves, amplified area effects. Earthquake and Surf emerged as ruthless staples, their indiscriminate fury hitting allies too. Earthquake, that ground-type tremor debuting in Gen 1 at power 100, once a solo battler's delight, shaking foes into oblivion. In doubles though, it ravaged everything on the field, unless flying types hovered safe. Imagine the ground buckling, cracks spiderwebbing under both teams, trainers sweating as their own Pokémon staggered from friendly quakes. Stats soared. It became a cornerstone in VGC, demanding earthquake-proof partners like Levitate users or grass types. Surf mirrored this double-edged tide. Water's cascading deluge, power 90, drowned all grounded foes. And friends, in Gen 3 onward doubles, unless subs or protects shielded them. Anime glimpses showed Misty's Starmie unleashing walls of water that spared allies through precise control, but rules enforced no mercy. These became meta-defining, with Earthquake Surf cores punishing clustered foes, forcing spread move counters like Rock Slide. By Gen 4's physical special split, Earthquake bulked to physical 100 power. Surf stayed special, cementing their tag team terror. Teams built around immunity, like Garchomp quaking, while levitating foes surf harmlessly beneath. This environmental interplay deepened with field effects, those lingering auras transforming battlefields into living entities. Grassy terrain sprouted in Generation 6. Kalos's Gift, a lush carpet healing all grounded Pokémon 5% per turn, evoking primal meadows where life rebounded endlessly. Electric terrain zapped in alongside, boosting electric moves by 50% while grounding airborne threats. No sleep allowed under its crackling dome. Psychic terrain shielded allies from priority moves. Mist terrain blocked status ailments, each a 10-turn veil, triggered by moves like those terrain seeds or Pokémon cries. A lore roots them in ancient ecosystems, grassy from Tapu herds, nurturing lands, electric channeling Zekrum's thunder veins. Gen 7 expanded with Grassy Glide priority on grass moves, turning fields into ambush zones. Competitive play weaponized them. Misty terrain neutering status spam, electric denying levitate cheese. They painted battles as symphonies of shifting domains, where a single seed toss rewove reality's fabric. Yet some interactions pushed too far, warping existence until official competitions banned them outright. Trick Room, that psychic reversal debuting in Gen 4, flipped speed order for 5 turns, slowpokes blitzing first, shattering agility's reign. Labelled reality warping for inverting natural laws, it dominated early VGC tiers until Tier 2 bans in Gen 5, suspects forever in Smogon. Wonder Room swapped defences to attacks, inverting bulk hierarchies. Magic Room nullified items, stripping arsenals bare. These rooms, bent dimensions, lore hinting at distortion world echoes, but regulators deemed them format breakers, too unpredictable, too godlike. Perish Song, Gen 2's Fatal Countdown, forced switches or feints in 3 turns, banned in some links for its inescapable doom. Even weather like Sandstorm or Rain Dance, while staples faced clauses when abusers like Tyranitar dominated. Developers balanced by shortening durations, adding terrain priority, but the banned ones linger as forbidden lore, moves that didn't just interact with environments, they redefined them entirely. As we trace these threads of terrain and tremor, ripples hint at evolutions yet to unfold, I'm pulling us toward Chapter 20, the future of move lore, where tomorrow's mechanics promise to shatter every boundary we've known. As those double battles raged on, with surf crashing over allies, an earthquake shaking the ground indiscriminately, trainers began craving moves that danced on the edge of control, ones that rewarded precision over sheer devastation. This hunger has quietly reshaped the heart of Pokémon combat, pulling us from the raw blasts of Hyper Beam that left legends slumped in exhaustion, toward a new era where utility reigns supreme. Look back just a generation or two. In the blistering heat of Generation 8, with its 44 Max and G-Max moves, raw power still thundered. Gigantic eruptions that warped Dynamax arenas into chaos. But even then, cracks appeared. Moves like Max Airstream boosted speed across the team, turning brute force into sustained momentum. Generation 9 doubled down, unleashing 69 fresh techniques in Scarlet and Violet, many laced with cunning utility. Terra Blast, adapting on the fly, Spidery Web slowing foes without a scratch, even Salt Cure chipping away like relentless erosion. These aren't the one-shot wonders of old, like the 150 base power of Hyper Beam demanding a full turn's recharge. No, they're scalpels in a world of sledgehammers. Priority strikes from Sucker Punch Descendants, status layers from Glare's paralyzing stare, setups that terraform the field with grassy terrain or electric surge. This shift mirrors the Pokémon themselves, evolving from first stage bruisers hurling normal type haymakers to majestic finals channeling special elemental fury. Raw power dominated early generations. Those 165 moves of Generation 1 built for elemental triads, Fire Blast scorching, Thunderbolting with pinpoint paralysis. Yet as the physical special split arrived in Generation 4, utility bloomed. Suddenly close combat's high-risk brawling coexisted with Focus Blast's special precision, and low kick scaled with weight like a tactician's wager. By Generation 5's 92 editions, Electro Ball varied its zap from 60 to 150 based on speed gaps, a pulse of adaptive vengeance. Fast Forward, and Dragon Pulse 85 power shockwave from Generation 4 not only evolves Poipole into the Ultra Beast Naganadel, but ripples through teams as a special dragon staple, evoking vibrational myths without the exhaustion tax. What fuels this pivot? Battles grow thornier, metas demand endurance, trainers tire of Hyper Beam's sleep-like slump, craving Water Pulse's 20% confusion rings, or Shadow Ball's ectoplasmic defense drops. Utility moves layer advantages, 20% flinch from Air Slash, terrain denial via defog, turning 6-on-6 marathons into chess matches. Raw power lingers in icons like Ice Beam's 10% freeze, a cryogenic pulse freezing foes mid-charge, but it's often paired now with utility hybrids, Blizzard's Hailstorm setups, or Electro Ball's Orb scaling against lumbering tanks. Peering deeper into tomorrow, imagine new types shattering the 18-type mosaic. Whispers of a sound type have echoed since Generation 4's Round and Snarl, moves that could retroactively exalt Hyper Voice from normal fodder to sonic supremacy, piercing steel walls once immune. A cosmic type might recast Star Freeze echoes in Rockslide's origins, transforming early ground tricks into stellar barrages, or elevate Meteor Beam's recharge into celestial inevitability. Picture it. Dragon Pulse retyped cosmic, pulsing otherworldly waves that warp weaknesses anew, much like Fairy in Generation 6 neutered Dark and Dragon dominance overnight, flooding move pools with pixelate-boosted returns. Every new type rewrites history. Steel and Dark in Generation 2 humbled Psychic Tyranny, birthing Shadow Ball as a ghostly counter. A fresh type wouldn't just add moves, it'd cascade through tutors, TMs and memories, the move reminder, unearthing forgotten potentials in ancient Pokédexes. This evolution sparks a fervent subculture among dedicated collectors, the move dex completionists. These hunters scour every corner of Paldea or Hisui, chaining encounters for that elusive animation, the way Dragon Pulse warps air into draconic shockwaves, or Water Pulse blooms in hypnotic rings before confusing the mind. Rarest prizes, obscure gems like Beat-Up's multi-hit Frenzy from Generation 2, or Gen 5's Final Gambit's Sacrificial Explosion, animations buried in event-only learn sets or tutor obscurity. They chase the visual poetry, Shadow Ball's swelling orb of spectral mist unravelling defences with a 20% drop, Electro Ball's plasma sphere crackling brighter against slower prey, forums buzz with frame-by-frame dissections, unearthing dev Easter eggs. Like Ice Beam's prototype ties to Staryu's Starfreeze, or Hyper Beam's anime birth from a hurled rock, foreshadowing energy overload. It's a digital archaeology, piecing move lore from pixels, ensuring no pulse, beam, or orb fades into obscurity. And nowhere does this future feel more alive than in the anime, where moves bridge the mechanical games to living myth. Dragon Pulse doesn't just deal 85 damage, it throbs with ultra-space vibrations. Naganadel's evolution, a spectacle of otherworldly birth. Water Pulse confuses with pulsing serenity, echoing Goldine's Waterfall HM legacy into status artistry. Shadow Ball hurls ectoplasm that haunts, tying to Curse's ghostly shifts. You type in Generation 2, pure ghost, after. The anime amplifies utility's subtlety. Electro Ball accelerates with speed differentials, a charged orb chasing Pikachu's rivals. Hyper Beam exhausts like true overkill, Mewtwo collapsing post-blast. Even environmental echoes persist, Surf's waves now utility in contests, Earthquake's rumbles narratively sparing allies through trainer bonds. Moves here aren't code, they're stories, raw power yielding to nuanced lore that games chase eternally. As we stand on this precipice, gazing at utility's rise and types yet unborn, one truth endures. Every move cycles through rise, dominance, and reinvention, echoing the endless rhythm of battle itself. Join me next for Chapter 21, The Eternal Cycle of Combat, where we'll uncover how these forces loop eternally, trapping even the mightiest in patterns no trainer can escape. As we gaze toward that horizon, where utility dances with raw power and new types might ripple backward through every move pool we've ever known, one truth crystallizes amid the speculation. Over 900 moves now pulse through the veins of the Pokémon world, a grand total forged across 27 years of relentless evolution, from the raw 165 of 1996 to the 69 fresh strikes of 2022. Picture the sheer weight of it. Generation 1 laid the foundation with blasts like Hyper Beam, that exhausting normal-type torrent, leaving its user slumped in recharge, a metaphor for power's inevitable toll. Ice Beam followed, its cryogenic pulse freezing foes in 10% of clashes, echoing the elemental triads that defined early special attacks for evolved forms. Then came the pulses, Dragon Pulse in 2006, a vibrational shockwave strong enough to trigger Poipol's metamorphosis into Naganadel, and Water Pulse from 2002, its confusing rings expanding Water's status arsenal beyond the static rush of Waterfall. Orbs rounded out the arsenal, Electro Ball in 2010, its power swelling from 60 to 150 based on speed gaps, a charged plasma sphere that rewarded the swift. Shadow Ball from 1999, the ectoplasmic hurl that dropped defences and countered the once unassailable psychic dominance with Ghost's spectral edge. These aren't isolated sparks, they're threads in a tapestry exceeding 900, each gen weaving in more, 86 in 2, Hishuan 103 in 3, the physical special split of 4 unleashing dual-natured fury like Focus Blast and Close Combat. Z moves in 7, Max and Gigantamax in 8. This colossal move pool doesn't just chronicle battles, It reshapes the mythos itself. Early normal and fighting moves mirrored a Pokemon's primal growth, first stages pounding with physical basics before evolutions unlocked elemental specials. Growlithe to Arcanine, that arc of maturation etched into every type chart. Type shifts balanced the cosmos, bite twisting from normal to dark, gust lifting into flying, rock slides starry freeze hinting at prototype depths. Dark and Steel arrived to humble psychics, just as the split in 4 liberated moves from rigid type prisons, letting merit dictate might. Yet amid this explosion, a profound restraint holds the universe in equilibrium, the 4-move limit. Each Pokémon, legendary or common, can grasp only 4 techniques at once. Why 4? It's no arbitrary cap, it's the philosophical heartbeat of Pokémon combat. A cosmic balancer preventing any one creature from embodying the full 900+ arsenal. Imagine a Rayquaza hoarding Hyper Beam. Dragon Pulse, extreme speed and outrage. It dominates, yes, but exhausts, recharges, falters. The limit forces sacrifice, mirrors life's trade-offs. Raw power like Hyper Beam demands rest. Utility like status pulses invites counters. This constraint births strategy's eternal cycle. You teach close combat for devastating blows, but accept the defense drops. Low kick scales with weight, punishing the bulky, yet leaves openings. Or TMS and tutors become memory gatekeepers. Delete erases the obsolete, reminder revives the forgotten, ensuring no Pokémon becomes a god of all trades. In doubles, Earthquake ripples to allies unless you pivot. Surf drowns the field indiscriminately. The 4-move slot is the universe's wisdom. Abundance breeds complacency, limitation sparks ingenuity. It's why Terastall's adaptive Terra Blast thrives. It slips into that sacred quartet, bridging types without bloating the mind. And what caps this cycle perfectly? Sleep moves. From the humble hypnosis of Generation 1 to the yawn chains that doom foes turns later, Sleep embodies conclusion, respite amid fury. Why are they the ideal finale to Pokémon lore? Because combat's wheel turns ceaselessly, Hyper Beams recharge, the slumber after Shadow Ball's haunt, but Sleep halts it, not in defeat, or but renewal. In the mythos, sleep isn't weakness, it's the breath between pulses, the void where orbs recharge. Anime echoes it, beams fired till exhaustion, pulses fading to dreams. Poipole evolves through Dragon Pulse, but every legend rests. Rayquaza coils dormant, Mewtwo meditates in stasis. These 900+ moves form a language, born from a simple 1996 RPG grid, where Karate Chop upgraded normal punches and Forget Monster Poofs marked the end. That grid swelled into symphonies, environmental calls like Cut and Fly, bending wilds to will, signatures like Volt Tackle imprinting Pikachu's spark on eternity, Max moves erupting in Dynamax Colosseums. What began as stat-driven hacks, raw attack for physicals, special for beams, morphed into a dialect of intent, where a Pokémon's 4 slots narrate its soul. I reflect on the arc. Generation 1's Elemental Dawn countered with 2's Ghosts and Shadows. 3's Pulses added Confusion's Whisper. 4's Split freed fighting from normal Shadow. 5's Orbs scaled with Cunning. Paldea's Terastall twisted types mid-clash. Utility surged against Power's Roar. Taunt for Clobbopus's spiteful growth. Stomp for Steenie's Bloom. Yet Roar blasts endure, because the cycle demands both. New types loom, perhaps Fairy evolutions or Steel Pulses, retrofitting the pool, but the 4-move lore endures, eternal guardian. In this grand loop, every move, from Ice Beam's chill to Electro Ball's surge, feeds the mythos, a living chronicle where battles aren't endpoints, but breaths in an endless rhythm. Sleep descends, not to end, but to awaken the next clash, ensuring the language of combat speaks forever. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective, or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.